Return to the past with a warehouse. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276, Sitting and Talking About Li Ju. The sedan chair from Chengyang traveled for 2/4 of an hour to the Day Palace, which was located to the north of the central axis of the palace. It then passed through 2 more courtyards before landing. The word day actually refers to Giksu. Giksu is the end of the legendary 100 rivers flowing east to the sea. The courtyards in Day Palace are basically taken from related allusions. The main hall is a Giksu hall, and even the screen wall is inscribed with the 8 characters. It is not enough to pour, but it is inexhaustible to drink. The style of the palace is also grand and open, and only in the gardens and flowers can one see the exquisite and ingenious thoughts. The local maids were ready to welcome them. They could not get close to them directly, so they could only help the palace servants brought by the princess to place their luggage. Xiking and others first served the princess to wash, change clothes, have tea and rest. Xiking asked, "Master," the maid Fang Gang said, "that we have arranged dozens of new clothes here. Would you like to wear ours or this?" Chengyang did not want to argue with the locals. Her great-grandfather started his rebellion in Jiangnan. Although she had never been to Jiangnan, she was considered a Jiangnan person. So Chengyang asked, "Have they prepared a formal dress?" Yes, the maid saw it and said that the style is not bad, but the pattern is sewn with some new ideas. Chengyang said, "Then let's take it." Xiking hurriedly asked the palace maid to bring the formal dress prepared in Jiangnan. When Princess Yu was choosing a bun and jewelry for combing her hair, another palace maid followed in and reported that the carriage of the prince consort had also arrived and where to send it. Chengyang was feeling uncomfortable due to traveling for days and was too lazy to deal with this consort, so he said, "Send him to the place closest to our ancestral lineage and don't let him in. Just put Shayna in the side hall. There's no point in putting the victim and the perpetrator together." The palace maid took the order and left. Xiking said, "Finally we can get rid of him. Mr. Li's idea is a little bad, but it's really good for the master." Of course, Mr. Li is different from others. Chengyang saw a delicate miniature peony-shaped silk gauze flower poking out of a emerald green branch outside the window. He ordered a set of clothes from the picture album and ordered a few matching phoenix crowns and accessories to be sent to him for a look. He smiled lightly and said, "That's good." In the end, Chengyang changed into a scarlet silk phoenix-shaped large-sleeved shirt and wore a white Russell mid-length top with flowing water and flying flowers inside. He picked out an exceptionally exquisite daily crown from a pile of crowns. Xiking took the phoenix crown from the maid holding the box. As soon as she touched it, she felt something was wrong and uttered a soft "A." Chengyang looked at her and Xiking hurriedly explained, "This phoenix crown is so light, but if you look closely, it is not bad at all. There are 2 golden phoenixes, 6 green pines, 9 pearl flowers, and a peacock thread twisted gold base. The hairpins, combs, and hairpins in front and back are all correct. The pearls are as big as pigeon eggs, and there is also a curtain of hairpins. The ones we usually wear at home weigh several kilograms, but this one seems to weigh less than 2 kilograms. This phoenix crown is Sanjiu's masterpiece. Sanjiu has always been most proud of Li Yuan's creativity and extraordinary aesthetics. The phoenix crown is divided into many specifications such as court dress, formal dress, daily dress, and home dress. Each specification has an independent set of standard requirements, but the Li family can freely use their inspiration in the standard requirements to make so many beautiful and exquisite phoenix crowns. Princess Chengyang turned the phoenix coronet in Xiking's hand and said with a smile, "It's all made of extremely fine filigree and the base is made of bamboo strips. No wonder it's so light and flexible. I liked it at first sight. Anyway, it's not a big day for court meetings or sacrifices, so just wear this one." Xiking and the other people in BD Palace couldn't help but curl their lips while tidying up Chengyang's hair so that she could wear the phoenix coronet. Xiking said, "Are they taking shortcuts? The master has never worn such a light corona." Chengyang said, "Isn't it better to be light? As long as it follows the standard, it doesn't matter if it's a pound more or less." In this hot weather, I find it boring to have something heavy. And look at the thought put into it, it's no less than gold. There's no limit to the amount of gold you can have, but money can't buy thought. So Princess Chengayang chose this filigree gold phoenix coronet as her jewelry, dressed up very beautifully, and went out to the main hall to meet the ladies of honor. Chengayang interacted with the ladies, and the next day she went to the ancestral temple to worship at the ancestral tomb. After that, Princess Chengayang lived in seclusion in Jinling City. Apart from regular worship, she rarely attended various activities and rarely accepted audiences from others. Madame Yu and the governor's wife invited her several times, but Princess Chengayang never responded. People in Jinling gradually got used to the fact that there was such a big Buddha who didn't like to move around in the city. Of course, Chengayang didn't want to go out and hang out. First, she didn't like to visit people to join in the fun. Second, she was unfamiliar with the place and couldn't talk to each other, so it was better not to chat. Third, she was not used to the climate in the south and felt hot and stuffy and was really lazy to move. Fourth, she went out this time to divorce her husband silently, so of course the less she went out, the better in the eyes of others. In just over 10 days, under the care of the imperial physician and the female physician, Princess Chengayang recovered. She spent a few days admiring the flowers in the palace, but the novelty wore off. She couldn't help but think of the correspondence with Li Ju and the miscellaneous books collected from Li Yuan. Since leaving the Daying Marquis's mansion, Princess Chengayang has stopped communicating with Li Ju, and all the letters have no way to be forwarded. Now that she has arrived in the Jiangnan area, the location is closer, and it seems that she can pick up the previous communication again. Princess Chengayang rarely has a partner to talk and chat with without feeling bored. She feels very uncomfortable to break off the communication for a while. Isn't it just right now? But because she brought people from the capital and was not familiar with the locals, Princess Chengayang couldn't think of anyone who could help her conceal her identity and continue to communicate with Li Ju under the name of Chun Zixing. Ziking, as Princess Chengayang's most trusted maid, can best guess her mind. Chengayang was bored for only 2 days, but Ziking guessed the reason why she was depressed recently, so she advised. In addition to the occasional reports from Zhang Zibu, Mr. Li's movements were also reported by Mr. Yu. Mr. Yu and Mr. Li must be very familiar with each other, or at least have contacts with each other. It is not good for the master to sit alone and be depressed. I heard from those little girls that Mr. Yu has 4 exquisite 4-season landscape glazed tile windows in his garden. Why don't you go there to relax? Chengayang's eyes lit up, and he immediately ordered someone to invite Mrs. Yu Jin to come, saying that he had also received teachings from Mr. Yu when he was studying, and now that he was in good health, he wanted to visit his master. Mrs. Yu did not doubt him, and happily agreed to go home to make arrangements. The Yu family had also prepared a place to receive the emperor, and the princess could go with a full set of ceremonial guards or incognito, and both could be accommodated. Princess Chengayang used the excuse of thanking her teacher, and naturally used her private identity, so the Yu family arranged to receive the emperor in their own garden, closed the door early to refuse guests, and swept the courtyard to wait for the phoenix carriage. On this day, Princess Chengayang dressed in a palace style. Everything was simple, and she only brought a few palace maids and guards. Although Ziking only used the colored windows in Yaoniang Garden as an excuse, when she really arrived at the garden and saw the 4 colored windows and a large rose dome built into a glazed greenhouse, she still couldn't help but marvel. Chapter 277, Sitting and Talking about Li Ju 2. Yaoniang was very proud of the glass world she built in the garden. Even if the spurs had 2 stained glass windows as high as a floor, they would not be as beautiful as the 4 flower walls and a dome. As long as it was sunny, the sunlight would sprinkle a colorful patch on the ground. If a person wearing white or black satin, gauze, or gauze clothes stood in it, he would be like a fairy. This morning, Chengayang arrived at Yu's house and first met Yaoniang with the courtesy of a student. Yaoniang naturally refused to accept it. After the greetings, Chengayang took the initiative to ask about the stained glass windows in the garden. Yaoniang was just showing off. Fortunately, he summoned his daughter-in-law and granddaughter to accompany the princess to enjoy the glass world. Madame Yu saw that Chen Guiyang was very satisfied with the colored window and said with a smile, the Yang family specially decorated a separate courtyard to welcome His Highness. There is also this glazed colored window there, but the pattern is different. Chen Guiyang reached out and touched the glass on the colored window, confirming that it was indeed the glazed glass commonly seen in the imperial capital. He said, it is hard for this skilled craftsman to come up with this idea and to make it with such excellent craftsmanship. It's a pity that colorful clouds are easily dispersed and glazed glass is fragile, so it can't be sent to the capital. Madame Yu said, what's the big deal? Ask them to send the manufacturing method, and the princess will take it with her. It won't be a big deal to open a kiln in the imperial capital to burn 2 sky-high windows. Chen Guiyang said, this is a craft that others used to make a living. If they give it to me, what will they eat? If this is the case, it would be better to add this amount to the tribute. With the money, he will be willing to think of more good ideas in the future, and the local area can also avoid some other taxes. The second wife said, the princess is a talented person. She has thought so much about us. If it was someone else who made the stained glass windows, what the princess said would be absolutely right. But this one is different from the others. If other craftsmen come to learn, he will teach them everything he knows. If you ask him, what will you do if others learn it? He will say, I know more than just this one, and there are more people who want to buy it. If one more person learns it, one more person can live a good life. I couldn't ask for more. Chen Guiyang smiled. It sounds like the tone of Mr. Li Yuan. I saw it in his book and discussed it with him. That's what he said. This was at the time of cement and honeycomb coal. Li Ju was very open to this kind of small technology with huge market demand, very low cost, and beneficial to improving people's livelihood. After the court intervened and set the price, he would meet every request and let others learn it without any selfish intention. The second lady was surprised and said, Your Highness has a good eye. The stained glass windows were indeed made by Mr. Li. At first, the master only took a dome, but the stained glass windows on the 4 walls were sent by Mr. Li after he knew that our master liked stained glass windows. The stained windows of the Yang family's villa also came from Li Garden. This was exactly what Chen Guiyang wanted. Chen Guiyang was thinking about how to bring up the topic of Li Garden, but the second lady took the initiative to mention it, saving her the trouble. Chen Guiyang counted on his fingers and said, speaking of Mr. Li, I was still in the capital at that time, and I often read several newspapers and magazines printed by their Li Garden for entertainment. Even this time, when I came to Jiangnan, I brought all the publications such as Li Garden miscellaneous studies that I compiled myself. Counting the days, the latest volume I got was in September last year. It's been almost a year in a blink of an eye. I have missed a lot. The second lady did not doubt him. What a coincidence. Mr. Li's miscellaneous studies are all read by our old husband. Not only do we read them, but we also like them very much. There are as many issues as there are, and the old husband bought them all. In case they are lost and can't be replaced, he bought 3 copies of each issue. If your highness wants to read it, why not tell our old husband, and the old husband will naturally be willing to give it to you. The princess has her own preferences, and the good ones are what her family is particularly good at. The second lady just thinks that this is a particularly good opportunity to make friends with the princess and falls on her family. She is happy to accompany the princess to talk to Yaoniang about this. Chen Guiyang pretended to refuse, but he couldn't, so he went to meet Yaoniang half-heartedly. But Yaoniang is not as easy to deceive as the second lady. At first, Princess Chen Guiyang only asked for some books, and Yaoniang did not notice anything. But when Chen Guiyang said, I will live in Jiangnan for 2 or 3 years, and it is not good to trouble Master Yu all the time. Why not ask Master Yu to tell me where and when to buy them, and I will find 2 people to go to Li Garden regularly to buy books. Yaoniang looked at her meaningfully, which made Chen Guiyang feel uneasy, and then he smiled slowly and said, okay. Isn't it just a reason to pass letters between Li Garden in an open and unobtrusive way? What's the problem? No problem. Li Ju has a pen pal in the capital named Chun Zisheng. He knew it. He knew it, and Yufu knew it too. But he knew a little more than Yufu's silly son, and he also knew who Chun Zisheng was. Many years ago, when the princess was not engaged, she often went around the capital, and the pseudonym she used at that time was Chunzi. Although Yunnan was old, he still remembered some things, but he was unwilling to say it out loud. Anyway, the princess's trip to the south was originally related to Li Ju's idea, and Chen Guiyang wanted to resume correspondence with Li Ju, which was understandable. As Yanan got older, she was more open to trivial matters, so she turned a blind eye and followed Chen Guiyang. Chen Guiyang faced Yanan's ambiguous gaze and gritted her teeth. She asked Ziking to accept the note written by Yaonan's servant, which contained the address, time and other information. Then she took the Liyuan journals for the past year given by Yaonan, and left Yu's house like a refugee. Chen Guiyang did not rush to write to Li Ju, but took the book given by Yaonan and read it impatiently in the bright afternoon sunshine. She liked Li Yuan's miscellaneous studies. It did not teach people morality or good and evil. It was the most objective and fair truth, not a constraint or a dogma. Chen Guiyang was actually a little rebellious. If she hadn't been rebellious, she would not have pretended to be Princess Chunxi and walked around the capital in her early years, and she would not have accepted Li Ju's advice to seriously consider divorce. Or even earlier, when she was studying the 4 books for women and reading the instructions for women, she was questioning why women are responsible for the home and men are responsible for the outside world, why women are virtuous if they are not talented, and why women should take care of their husbands and children. Is it because of the natural law of heaven and earth? Bullshit. Later, she was thinking about why she was a human being. Ziking was also a human being, and other palace maids and eunuchs were also human beings. She was a high-ranking princess, while Ziking and others were slaves who had to unconditionally give up their egos and dignity, and take their master's likes and dislikes as their own likes and dislikes, and take their master's will as their own will. After marriage, she was thinking about why her father, the emperor of this country, could match her with her husband, because he thought the husband was good. At first, these doubts were not so organized, and were vague and chaotic, until she and Li Ju had correspondence, and she read the answers to all her questions from Li Ju's unraveling of the story. Of course, Li Ju didn't dare to say directly that this was a production relationship in the feudal era, that the monarch's power was granted by God and the world was unified, and that the ruling system was a system of monarchs, ministers, fathers, and sons, etc. But Li Ju gave her the most superficial answer, and he also left enough space for her to think about the deeper truths behind. Chen Guiyang has always been very rebellious, but she has always suppressed her rebelliousness at the bottom and never showed it to others. She hates preaching and the golden rules that stipulate how she should be a good daughter-in-law and a good wife, so she particularly likes Li Yuan's doctrine without any preaching. 1 + 1 = 2. The action and reaction are equal in magnitude and opposite in direction and act on a straight line, and energy is conserved. There is only reason in this world, no heart, and Chen Guiyang likes it very much. She held a book 100 Schools of Miscellaneous Studies, which explained the basic principles of greenhouses, and wrote that Li Yuan was already preparing to build greenhouses, and the results could be seen next year, that is, this year. Chen Guiyang looked at the prediction of grain production in the book and felt fascinated. Chapter 278, The First Season's Harvest. After nearly a year, Li Ju received another letter from Chun Zishan. This time, Chun Zishan said that he came to Jinling for study tours, and because of his uncertain whereabouts for about a year, he did not get Li Yuan's journals, so he proposed to buy the missed issues of books and magazines, and also asked about the situation of the greenhouse with great concern. Speaking of greenhouses, Li Ju is not sleepy. Whether it is the results of the second harvest last year or the fruits and vegetables in Huangsheang this year, they all show the invincible advantages of greenhouse planting in extending the planting time and expanding the planting area. Unfortunately, the cost is too high, not to mention the cost of the glass greenhouse, and there is also a shortage of manpower to take care of the greenhouse. Not only is the greenhouse facing a shortage of manpower, this shortage does not mean that Li Yuan lacks people, but that once the technology is promoted, there will be many places that want to use this technology but lack talent. Other technologies such as compost management, water level and insect disease, and mildew management of rice-based fish ponds, and future regional animal husbandry, all require corresponding technical talents. At that time, the literacy rate in Daean was less than 5%. Even if Li Ju wrote everything in a book, how would the farmers who were closest to the land understand it? Just literacy was difficult, not to mention that literacy was only the foundation, and there was also the understanding of knowledge behind it. Li Ju was now looking for solutions to agricultural technology issues. At present, Li Ju hoped to combine the system of modern agricultural technology stations to establish an agricultural technology training system in Daean. The first two problems to be solved were how to quickly transfer technology between nodes at all levels, and how to solve the identity of these technical talents. If you don't take the path of the imperial examination, you can only be a clerk, but even a clerk needs a channel. After solving the channel for agricultural students and farmers, to enter the clerk class, you must also solve the mechanism for this kind of technical clerk to be not interfered with by local officials, otherwise everything will be empty talk. Li Ju could imagine with his toes that, if the process of technical talents entering the clerk class and rising in the clerk class could be interfered with by the local administrative system, in a few years, real talents would definitely be unable to move forward, and key positions would be filled with people with connections, second generation people, and people who bought and bribed officials. There are ready-made models. The current local school system and the entire system of student stipends are operating normally. It's not that no one wants to cheat, but it's really difficult to cheat. Even if there is, it's on a small scale. It's not so easy to fake whether a person has talent or not. If you pretend to be 90 points when you are 80 points, you can still pretend well, but if you pretend to be 80 points when you are 50 points, that's a mistake. The technical system can be built in the same way as this system, but the question is, can the imperial examination system tolerate the technical system to share a piece of the pie? Obviously they would rather kill this new system directly. So, can we not go the clerk route and go the civilian route? In order to increase their own grain production, farmers should also be willing to take the initiative to learn new technologies. It seems that, even if all nodes of the technical station are civilians, it will not affect the promotion of technology. Then the question is, how to ensure that those who have mastered the technology do not hide or conceal it? After all, only by eating alone can a family get rich. Li Ju believes that there must be selfless good people in this world, but he can't put all his bets on people's hearts. Sometimes he can't help but want to do something to enjoy himself. People's moral integrity is too illusory. Li Ju found all the journals that Changxisheng needed and packed a huge package with several layers of specially made mulberry paper. The name of the printing workshop was written on the mulberry paper. The reply letter was sent along with the package. The letter not only explained the principle and output effect of the greenhouse in detail, but also mentioned several issues of the journals involved in the principle. Finally, it mentioned the recent fruitful rice-based fish pond and mailing business, etc., indicating that if Changxisheng needed it, she could find Qingshan Post to deliver the message. Qingshan's mailing business has expanded to major towns nearby, but has not yet reached Jinling. However, as long as you are willing to spend money, it is no problem to force it to expand to Jinling. Li Ju and Changxisheng are not short of this little money. Considering that Sanjiu is in Jinling, and Yu Yaoniang and Yu Fu have contacts with Jinling, it is not too much to set up a separate post in Jinling. The Jizu, an ancient official postman, but postmen in Qingshan are basically also called Jizu, that Li Ju found this time was the team leader of a local post station. Li Ju meant that, since he had sent letters to Jinling, he might as well open a post station in Jinling to be responsible for the correspondence and small items between the two sides. Jizu was a bachelor, had no family, and was a retired soldier. He had a lot of strength and good skills, and was indeed a suitable candidate. Li Ju gave him 2 mules, so that he and Jizu at the post station could travel back and forth between the two places, and he agreed without hesitation. Li Ju then wrote a letter to Liuji Cargo Store in Jinling, asking the store to provide money and people to help Jizu open the post station in Jinling. Jizu quickly packed his luggage and set off, and the time for the first harvest on Li Ju's side was also coming. The greenhouse advanced the harvest time of the first crop of grain crops by a full month and a half, and the yield was not much different from the yield of grain crops that grew normally last year. When it came to harvest, nearby farmers gathered to watch the excitement again. At the beginning of this year, the greenhouse crops in Liyuan had been harvested. The people in Kingshan City had already seen the usefulness of the winter greenhouse and were full of expectations for it. However, as before, because the greenhouse effect was so outstanding, it was exaggerated and distorted when passed around, and people who had not seen it with their own eyes did not dare to believe it. When it came to the harvesting of the greenhouse in Huangshuang, many people who had heard the news before also followed the tenants of Huangshuang to watch the excitement. The crops in the greenhouse were planted early, and everyone knew that they had seen the seedlings and rice seedlings being planted in the first month of the year. Now it is harvest time. Looking from the outside, the greenhouse is also lush and green, with heavy ears and green leaves, a scene of a bumper harvest. But how it will turn out depends on the final weighing results. Because Li Ju was diligent in managing the greenhouse and knew everything about it, he did not guard it there. When he was there, everyone felt uncomfortable. Li Ju turned to the crab farm to see the crabs. Crabs in the south can be sold until September and October, and now there are a few fat and big ones. Li Ju simply rolled up his trousers and took the mute and the tenants in charge of this area to the fields to catch crabs, eels and loaches. The tenants in the Imperial Manor are different from those in other places. They have to give all their income from farming to the master, and the master pays them according to their work. Rather than being tenants, they are more like long-term workers who eat imperial food. After Li Ju took over, he gave them two choices, either renting or continuing to be hired workers. Because the manor used all new grains and new planting methods this year, not many farmers dared to rent directly. Most of those who stayed chose the old method of the Imperial Manor, not renting and planting, but only taking wages. Li Ju put an extra bonus outside, and in order to get the bonus, they did not dare to perfunctorily do their job, and they still worked hard to increase every yield. Judging from the situation this year, the farmers who rented directly will take advantage. The rice seeds Li Ju brought were obviously much more productive than the local ones, and the fish and crabs that survived in the rice fields were quite substantial. After paying the rent and taxes, the remaining money and grain was almost 2 to 3 times that of ordinary farmers. Some farmers had secretly taken a few big fish and weighed them. Wow, one weighed 3 pounds. They could be sold for some money. The person in charge of this crab field was too timid to choose to rent the fields, but to work instead. Now he regrets it so much that his face has turned green. Chapter 279 Another good harvest. The greenhouse and crab fields were full of harvests, and the mute also caught some fish and eels from the fish fields next to them. Li Ju was far away, washing crabs, loaches, eels, arms and legs in the canal beside the field, and he could still hear cheers and cheers from the greenhouse from time to time. Be happy, be happy. This year we can get it 1.5 months earlier. Next year we must apply mulch and top dressing, and try to get it 2 months earlier. This winter we must also strive to produce greenhouse vegetables, and with the chicken, duck, and pig farming industry that is still accumulating technology and cultivating seedlings, the living standards of Kingshan people may be able to rise to a higher level. With enough benefits, he can put forward the request to set up a technical station. The sooner he shows his muscles, the sooner he forces the ruling class to consider his demands. The mute and the farmers also washed their hands and feet one after another, and helped to clean up the crabs and aquatic products they caught. The fish and eels were mixed together, and except for the crabs, they were all taken away in clean water. The crabs were tied up with straw, and placed in a bucket, with a thin layer of water at the bottom. Li Ju said, "We'll have a harvest meal today, as a rehearsal for the harvest a month later. We'll also try to see if the crabs and fish we've raised are good to eat." The mute grinned, full of confidence. The farmer also smiled and said, "It's good if they are edible. They're all river seafood, and they are meat, so how can they not be good to eat?" That afternoon, the cooks at the Imperial Farm pounded the new rice, fried corn with pine nuts and dried shrimp, shredded yellow eels, steamed crabs with rice wine, chopped rice fish and braised them, steamed potatoes and sweet potatoes in a pot, cooked a cabbage in soup, fried a handful of sunflowers and dogwood, fried pumpkin with scallions, and fried fish skin with young ginger. These were all the food that had just been harvested today. There was also an extra piece of fat meat bought from the butcher that was fried into fat residue for meat dishes. To be fair, the vegetables and rice in the greenhouse tasted a little worse, and only won because of the higher annual output. The crab's gills were black, and the meat was only slightly sweet. The crab roe was also not very good. The rice flour fish had a little earthy smell, which needed to be fried, and thickly spiced to be ignored. But this was enough. For every acre of land planted, one more basket of fish and crabs could be obtained. The excrement of the fish and crabs could also fertilize the soil. What else could people not be satisfied with? It was just that the rice-based fish pond system required a little bit of high quality from the farmers. Yu only took the big leaf tea to soak the rice, added corn, shrimp and fat residue, and slurped a bowl of dry food. After he finished eating, others were still holding small pieces of fish and crabs, carefully picking the meat bit by bit. Yu retreated first, strolled to rinse the bowl, and thought about the future while digesting the food. The mute, the farmers in the crab field, and the village head also followed him out. They had not finished eating, and each of them was still holding a bowl and eating rice while walking. The mute could probably guess why Yu didn't look happy, but he couldn't speak. Even if he could, he wouldn't speak. The other two didn't think that far ahead, and they didn't even feel that Yu was considering some troublesome things. Yu walked back and forth in the field twice, and the farmer in the crab field had already wiped his mouth and followed with a smile. Yu was also in a good mood because of his satisfied smile. "You are laughing so happily? Do you dare to rent a few acres of land next year to grow rice and raise crabs?" The farmer still laughed heartlessly. "I dare. Why not? I will learn to read this year, and before planting rice next year, I must learn to read the agricultural books given by the master. What if I still don't learn it, or this year is just an accident, but the yield is reduced next year?" The farmer said, "There is no bumper harvest every year. We farmers work hard to learn, and can always learn 70% to 80%. Besides, when there is really no harvest, it depends on the mercy of the master. At that time, I beg the master to help me think of a solution. I'm willing to pay more rent to the master." His idea is very simple. After all, this is a place close to Yu's heart. Yu can't sit idly by and watch the yield here reduce to zero, and it is even more impossible for them to explore on their own without interfering. This year, Yu's dedication to crops is no less than any other farmer. The farmers in the Imperial Farm have seen all of this. Yu liked their courage, and he didn't hate their attitude of asking him to cover the bottom line. They were more motivated when he covered the bottom line. Who would dare to try directly if he didn't cover the bottom line? "Okay, in the second season, you can rent whatever you want. I will teach you rice-based fish pond step by step until you learn it. It's just right. You can be a representative, and after you learn it, tell me what teaching method can make you learn quickly, remember it well, and avoid mistakes." Yu agreed. It's a good thing to produce more food a year, but there are so many farmers in the world. If I have to teach them one by one, it's impossible to teach them all. But if you want you to learn by yourself, I'm afraid that you will learn the wrong way and harm the crops. It's just right to use you and others as a precedent and set an example for the people of the world. If you learn it, others will learn it naturally. The farmer was very happy. According to Yu's words, those who didn't rent land this year can rent land next year. What's wrong with that? This year's harvest is all on the table. Yu led them to walk along a field ridge twice before returning. There were only 4 people when they went, but when they came back, there was a large crowd of people, all of whom were people who came to watch the fun and farmers who had been working in the Imperial Farm for half a year. They stared at Yu eagerly, and even they themselves could not explain why they could not help but follow Yu to walk around the field. I don't know who asked in the crowd, "Master, can we all use the greenhouse?" Immediately, many people echoed, "Yes, yes, master, can we use it? With this, I can pay you double the rent next year." Yu waited for them to calm down and replied, "Of course. The greenhouse is so expensive, can we really use it? It will definitely be very cheap in the future, so I need more craftsmen who are good at smelting, firing pottery, modeling clay and various other skills. If you know people who are good at these, please remember to recruit 1 or 2 for me. With everyone's help, if it doesn't work this year, it should be done next year." The people gathered together cheered loudly. Some people who were recruited this year wanted to kneel down and kowtow on the spot, but were stopped by the people who came into Lee Garden in front. Some people were skeptical, but seeing that others took it seriously, they couldn't help but believe it. Others were happy, but they hesitated whether to contribute their skills. Being a farmer is always better than being a craftsman. Craftsmen are not allowed to take the imperial examinations now, so you can see how low their status is. Li Ju didn't think too much and smiled and responded to various questions raised by several people standing closer. Today's harvest in the greenhouse has greatly stimulated everyone's desire to struggle, which is a good thing. With such high enthusiasm for production, there will surely be a small blowout next year. With sufficient food, industrial transformation is a natural thing. The situation that people who lost their land and were forced to flee famine that he saw this year will become the situation in the future, where everyone actively transforms to industry in King Niu village and Jeteng's village. With real workers, the Yahoo Union that he had planted a long time ago will be useful. Chapter 280. Sour old Zhang is very appetizing. The greenhouse harvest in Huangshuang was like a signal. Next came the greenhouse harvest in Lian. Then, fruits, rice, beans, early maturing varieties, and normal varieties all entered the harvest period one after another. The joy of the harvest gradually climbed up everyone's mouth and flushed their cheeks. This year, the people of Kingshan were particularly excited because Li Yuan had been hiding new seeds for 3 years and finally began to sell them to the public. Li Ju was still worried about accidents, so he stipulated that each family could buy no more than 3 mu of seeds. Although everyone thought it was too little, it was still understandable. The first batch of people who bought seeds were those who had obtained pre-sale notes from Li Yuan in the first year. Only after the pre-sale notes of these people were redeemed did they line up later. Li Ju released a total of 20 tons of various grain seeds, many of which were taken away by large merchants in other nearby counties. Yu County bought especially many. From last year to this year, Yu County converted many farmlands into cotton and mulberry silkworms, and the land used for growing grain was almost reduced by a quarter. Even if County Magistrate Zhang was stupid, he knew that he had to find a way to stabilize the grain supply. After all, the official warehouses of Yu County were burned to the ground, and there was almost no grain left. The only grain left was the part that was seized from the grain merchants when he took office last year. Why were the grain merchants so rich, but only a little was seized from the houses and put into the official warehouses? In order to win the hearts of the people and be a good person as soon as possible, Lao Zhang gave most of the grain to the civilians, or paid it directly as taxes according to the difference in grain prices. This was one reason. Another reason was, of course, that the property of most grain merchants was swallowed by Lao Zhang himself. Since he swallowed it, it was the property of his family, so there was no reason to spit it out. In order to prevent the lack of food at the end of the year and be forced to eat and spit it out, Lao Zhang had to introduce 10 tons of new Yuan seeds to the county. The road between Yu County and Kingshan City is being prepared for construction. After 2 years of polishing, Kingshan City already has a very mature road construction team, which can not only widen and reinforce the original path, but also replan it according to the terrain, and the new road built is more convenient, strong, and durable. Li Ju was going to open a new sea route from Yu County, hoping that this new route would have sufficient logistics and transportation capacity. He originally disliked the original road for being too tortuous, and some of the adjacent places in the middle were not accessible at all. He either had to take a detour or cut a road out with a knife. He simply took this opportunity to clear the entire road and relay it out, which would save him from future troubles. The old county magistrate Zhang of Yu County also tried his best to reopen the port of Yu County in order to start shipping. He was very good at calculating economic accounts. As long as shipping was opened, the merchants would go through him. Even if he did not plunder the people, he could still enjoy a huge fortune. Opening post stations, inns and restaurants, buying land at the docks, and developing his own industries would make a lot of money. Maybe he could also drive other people in the county to get rich. Then he would force local wealthy businessmen to contribute money and effort to help the poor, and he could still appease the people's livelihood and win good political achievements. However, the effect was not ideal at present, and he failed to communicate with the old Zhang family. He couldn't convince his father, and his father would not try to convince the emperor. Taking the opportunity to buy grain seeds, Liu Zhang put aside his government affairs and came to Qingshan County in person. Although Qingshan County is still so small this year, even the farthest villages have already shown signs of prosperity. It is clear that Li Yuan did not distribute money and things to everyone, but it just achieved the effect of everyone's family being well off. With a well-off family, it is inevitable to multiply the population. Even the old widowers and bachelors in the farthest villages have wives, and families without sons have sons one after another regardless of whether these wives and sons are robbed, bought, kidnapped, or voluntarily. In short, the population of each village has increased. With a large population, convenient transportation and profitability, the rich labor force will inevitably move to the city. They earn wages in Qingshan City and subsidize their families a lot, and the conditions at home are getting better and better. When Liu Zhang came to Qingshan City, even the poorest villages had old men and women who walked and chatted without doing anything. There are also some special villages, such as King Niu village, because the village itself is actually not suitable for continued farming. People basically moved away with their families, or went to the city, or joined relatives, and merged into other villages. Such villages with difficult conditions disappeared spontaneously, leaving only a few acres of good land with their owners, and merged into other villages. Liu Zhang was very excited when he saw this. If he was given 3 years to make Yu County like this, and his father worked hard, he might be promoted to the local governor. I really don't know what the officials of Yu County and Huajia County were thinking in the past 2 years. They didn't use such good conditions, but ruined their careers. How can the little money given by the grain merchants compare with the money they earn legally after becoming rich? Liu Zhang also noticed that some people from Yu County were fleeing to Qingshan on the road. Liu Zhang also knew about the things that had been done since last year to build a textile factory to collect cotton. It was just that seeing the people under his rule leave their homes to seek a new life was always in his eyes, making him feel uncomfortable. Forget it. If it weren't for Li Ju, the person they were seeking refuge with, he would definitely use the characteristics of the old Zhang family's dandy son to beat the other party to a pulp. We are all children of high-ranking noble families. I'm a real villain who scrapes the land, but does not hurt lives, and you are a hypocrite who pretends to be kind and righteous to seek fame and reputation. Why can't I beat you? But Li Ju is a real good man. Although Liu Zhang is a bastard, he still admires the real good people and dares not act rashly. When County Magistrate Liu Zhang came to Qingshan City, he first paid homage to County Magistrate Wu, the local snake, and was welcomed by County Magistrate Wu and the nobles of the county for a meal. Liu Zhang and Liu Wu knew each other before, but they were not familiar with each other. In Liu Zhang's eyes, Liu Wu was also a real villain. However, the real villains have different purposes. Liu Zhang wants to fight for the family property, while Liu Wu wants to survive. The year before last, when the Ministry of Personnel was arguing about who should be sent to Qingshan, Liu Zhang's family had already avoided the problem, but Liu Wu was the cannon fodder that was torn to death by the Confucian scholars, or rather the Imperial Examination faction and the profit-seeking faction in the Confucian scholars. When Liu Wu was sent out, Liu Zhang felt a little sympathetic towards him. Unexpectedly, less than half a year later, Liu Zhang regretted it so much that he ran to Jiangnan crying and was willing to settle for a poor and remote place like Yu County. When Liu Zhang saw Liu Wu, he felt very jealous, especially when Liu Zhang learned that Liu Wu's wife was Yu Yaoniang, the former director of the textile factory, half of Li Ju's own people, and the female craftsman who drew and restored the drawings of the mule machine. He was so jealous that his saliva was about to flow down. Li Ju had no plans to get married, and he had no brothers or sisters to be related to. It was almost impossible to marry him to achieve the purpose of being of the same blood. But Liu Wu was so powerful that he created a sister for Li Ju out of nothing. The blueprint of the killer mule machine in the hand of this girl made Liu Zhang salivate. The mule machine is so good that you just need to queue up, but the manufacturing method of the mule machine is extremely rare. For some reason, Li Ju, who has always been generous and dared to disclose everything to the public, kept the mule machine tightly this time. He even let go of the shuttle, but he just held onto the mule machine. County Magistrate Wu was very ambitious, and he could get an extra bowl of rice just by looking at Liu Zhang's sour expression. Huang Zhi and Yufu, who were accompanying him, had also heard of County Magistrate Zhang, but they knew less and were more unfamiliar with him than County Magistrate Wu, so they could only say some polite words. The atmosphere at the table was quite good. After drinking a few glasses of wine, they became very familiar with each other. Hearing that Magistrate Zhang came to Qingshan this time to ask for help from Li Ju, Huang Zhi said, "This is unfortunate. Brother Li is now supervising grain matters at the farm in the northern suburbs of the city. If you want to see him, I'm afraid you have to wait until tomorrow morning." Chapter 281. Old Zhang's Observations. County Magistrate Liu Zhang originally wanted to stay in Qingshan for a few more days. He had no intention of leaving today. He replied, "It's tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. It's no problem. I'll stay for 2 more days. It's just right to visit a few old friends." While visiting, he can also see if there are any good things in Qingshan that can be sent to Yu County. This is also for the good of Yu County. Liu Zhang has quite a lot of old friends. In addition to those present, there are Director Wang and the music director of the Yufu who has lived here for 2 or 3 years. After all, he is a dandy who has a wide range of friends and is very good at eating, drinking and having fun. He makes friends regardless of status or family background. If they get along well, they can drink together, and if they get along well, they can travel together. Huang Zhi and others all have their own affairs. Liu Zhang can't let them put down their work to accompany him, so he asked Director Wang to inspect the local area together. Director Wang should be called Wang Jiaoyu at this time. He had already resigned from the position of Director of the Ministry of Industry and got the title of Jiaoyu in Dashan County. There is a difference between a teacher and a teacher. Director Wang and Old Huang are both instructors in their own province. They are placed in counties with good student quality to take charge of county schools. They are qualified to supervise the county examinations in a place which is closer to the principles of university-affiliated middle schools in modern society. Schools with poor student quality or county schools that are not outstanding may not necessarily have teachers of this level. The difference between a school and a private school is also quite large. Some local schools can compete with well-known private academies, such as Songjiang School and Kayantang School, which almost account for 2/3 of the annual quotas for the imperial examinations in Lingbei Road. In some places, private schools are only slightly better than none. Both teachers and students are very poor, and most of the motivated people rely on their own teachers or family education to study. The school in Qingshan County is already quite famous, and in the past 2 years, it has been the best in Hualien Road. The school is full of talents, and there is no shortage of students who come from other counties and even Lingbei Road to study, including Fu Xiaoguya, Yu Sanlang and others. They all studied at the Qingshan school. Recently, it is the harvest season, and most local students have to go back to their hometown to help their families harvest. There are very few people who are well off and do not need to work in the fields themselves, so the county simply gave them a holiday. Children from wealthy families such as Zhaoli simply ate at home during this period. Rich people always have more opportunities to receive education, and this has been the case since ancient times. Teacher Wang took advantage of the holiday to tutor his own children at home. He originally wanted to study in Jiangnan, take exams in his ancestral home, study with the top group of people, and take exams with the relatively poor group of people, so as to get the best of both worlds. Unexpectedly, his child lived in Qingshan for half a year, but he didn't want to study anymore. Every day, he only wanted to run to Li Yuan's private school. Today he wanted to study agriculture. Tomorrow he wanted to study medicine, and recently he wanted to study cartography, which made his parents very angry. Old Zhang came to him to be his guide, and then Teacher Wang pulled himself out of his own mess and accompanied Old Zhang to the imperial farm to find Li Ju. Teacher Wang introduced the new changes in Qingshan City this year to Old Zhang along the way, including the addition of several joint ventures, the repair of roads, the establishment of new government agencies. Old Zhang wanted to get his hands on everything while listening. Especially this joint venture. The idea was first class. If he set up a joint venture and gave himself 80% of the shares, wouldn't it be a 30% stake in the industry? to win 100% of the right to speak, and he could have the final say in everything in the future? Strolling along the way, old Zhang added a lot of things to his little notebook and walked for half a day before finally arriving at the Imperial Farm in the northern suburbs. At a glance, the entire Imperial Farm was full of busy people. The harvested fields need to be repaired in time, the confiscated fields are being harvested, the rice fish and rice crabs need to be carefully preserved and raised, or directly made into pickled products, the seedlings in the nursery room have sprouted, and the second or even third crop of crops have been planted in the greenhouse. Amid the crowd, Liu Zhang widened his eyes and looked everywhere for his imaginary Li Ju. In Liu Zhang's assumption, Li Ju should be very similar to several old upright people in Beijing, such as Zheng Shidao, who truly care about the world and the people, do not like women or entertainment, and are extremely old-fashioned. As for appearance, he should be a young scholar, either like Zheng Shidao, wearing a straight long gown and simple decorations, or like Yang Mingxin, who is unkempt, and always frowns and thinks about his own things. However, he looked around, and did not see such a person. All he saw were busy farmers and farmers' wives. Teacher Wang led the boy to dismount, and old Zhang followed suit. The two handed the horses to the boy's attendant, and old Zhang followed Teacher Wang to a field next to the greenhouse. Under old Zhang's puzzled gaze, Teacher Wang stopped beside a farmer, and bowed to him. Dr. Li. Li Ju himself didn't quite remember that there was a nominal title of doctor, and for a moment he didn't react that he was being called. It was only after the village head and the mute reminded him that Li Ju hurriedly put down the bucket in his hand and returned the greeting to Teacher Wang. Mr. Wang. Old Wang pulled old Zhang again. This is the Minister of Agriculture Li Yu, brother Li, and this is my good friend in Beijing, my brother Zhang Fu Zhang Shuxin, who is now the county magistrate of Yu County. Li Ju and old Zhang got to know each other again, and old Zhang finally believed that the tall and big man in front of him, who was only a little more muscular than a farmer, was the Li Ju he imagined. Li Ju rolled up his trouser legs and sleeves, wading barefoot in the ridges of the field. The mud reached his ankles. He was holding a bucket in his hand, and inside the bucket were several bamboo tubes placed in different categories. His appearance was indeed different from the people here. His expression was very cheerful, and he really didn't see any scholarly or old-fashioned temperament. Liu Zhang was very easy to get along with by nature. He was the kind of person who was lively, straightforward, but very careful about his degree. Li Ju personally went to the field to shovel the soil with a bucket. Most people would not ask him what he was doing in public in order to maintain social distance. Only Huang Zhi and others who were already very familiar with him, or people like Yu Fu who were originally related to biology and agronomy, would ask. But Liu Zhang was different. Liu Zhang was curious and felt that there was no trick here, so he asked directly, Brother Li, what are you doing? Li Ju took out a bamboo tube and saw that the bamboo tube was padded with a layer of mulberry paper and there was some soil inside. He said bluntly, take some soil back to check the composition, especially the fertility. You should know that I got new grain seeds the year before last and built a greenhouse last year. This year I plan to focus on soil fertility. Li Ju had taught the composting method before and even secretly spread modern bacteria in the compost pit, but this was the first time that the issue of soil fertility was raised in a real sense. It was only a matter of time for the potters to break through the technical limitations of glass. It was not too difficult for the textile factory to make a rough ground film. With the greenhouse and the future ground film and the seeds, what else was missing? Farm tools and fertilizers. Since the farm tools in this world are already very mature, people in the era of not understanding mechanics used thousands of years of farming experience to adjust various farm tools to the most labor-saving and convenient state. Before the advent of electricity, if farm tools wanted to improve efficiency, they could only work on materials science, and materials were related to smelting, and smelting had been handed over to blacksmiths and others to figure out. What Li Ju wanted to do was fertilizer, or soil fertilizer. This was the only area where people of this era could not help, so Li Ju even opened a chemistry class in the school. Unfortunately, the number of chemistry talents was even smaller than that of physics, geography and biology, so the only ones who could be used were the two young men who were apprentices to Li Ju at the time. Chapter 282. Old Zhang's Records 2. The composting issue was on the agenda. Li Ju had no other ideas for the time being. He just wanted to work out the methods of feces fermentation and bone meal slow release, and use them first. The effect of the previous small-scale pilot was okay, and it would not be too late to promote it this year. The importance of composting was long realized by ancient farmers, but they could not accurately locate what fertility was like Li Ju, who wanted to do soil composition analysis, nor did they understand the optimal ratio of various soil components, and the varieties of soil fertilizer were single. Since they did not understand the condition of the soil, the needs of the seedlings, and what fertilizers they had in hand, what people could give might not be what the seedlings needed. Experienced farmers could judge whether they should be supplemented with wood ash or human and animal manure based on the state of some seedlings, but most farmers did not master this skill. At the same time, more types of grain were not known to people to the extent that they had such a deep need for fertilizers, so everyone had to guess blindly what to supplement. Li Ju had not thought of a way to accurately judge soil fertility without relying on modern technology. Needless to say, a soil composition detector might not be built in the world, even if it was given another 100 years. The relatively primitive reagent extraction method is not easy to replicate. All the test reagents cannot be produced. Once used up, they are gone. It is impossible to do this for all the land in the country, and it is also impossible to guarantee the use in the next few decades. Moreover, these reagents may be used more urgently in the future. So Li Ju only planned to take some reagents for random inspection, which is considered a sampling survey in statistics. Through the results of the sampling, the changes in soil fertility can be roughly described, so as to estimate the soil fertilizers needed in different situations. Li Ju took samples from various crop fields in Huangshuang, and filled 3 wooden barrels. Director Wang and County Magistrate Zhang came to Huangshuang at the end of the sampling work, and saw with their own eyes how Li Ju worked like an ordinary old farmer. Director Wang knew that Li Ju attached great importance to agriculture, and County Magistrate Zhang actually knew it too, but he didn't expect it to this extent. Magistrate Zhang was also blunt. Soil fertility, as the name suggests, is the fertility of a piece of land. It is related to the harvest of the year, and it is indeed important. But, it seems that there is no need for you to go to the fields yourself. For a family like ours, it is also appropriate to ask a few servants to harvest. Why bother you to do this menial task yourself? Director Wang was immediately nervous. Although he had never met Li Ju very well, he knew him well. He knew that he did not care about high and low, and was a result-oriented person. Old Zhang's words were simply dancing in Li Ju's minefield. Li Ju did not think so much. He himself did not value these things, but he did not want everyone in the world to be like him, and disregard the high and low. Magistrate Zhang was a child of a noble family. He was used to being high and mighty. How could he automatically throw away the education and rules he had received for decades? On the contrary, Magistrate Zhang's straightforward questioning showed that he was really an honest and friendly person, willing to think more about strangers. Li Ju replied, "There is nothing to do, so I'll do something myself." He walked back to the field, hung the 3rd wooden barrel on the horse's back, and said, "I'll take you to the place where I entertain guests first. You two can have tea later. I'll change my clothes and come back." Li Ju, the mute, the village head and others had muddy water on their trouser legs. They really didn't look like entertaining guests. If they wanted to talk to the guests slowly, they had to wash up first. Director Wang and Lao Zhang understood very well and said, "I'll wait." The group was taken by Li Ju to a newly built courtyard beside the Imperial Farm. It was also a standard Liuan-style building with a stable front and backyard, a 1-meter high wall, and a square 2-story building facing north and south, with a total of 10 rooms. Lao Wang and Lao Zhang were welcome to sit at the top of the east wing on the 1st floor, while Li Ju and others turned to the northwest corner to wash. The village head was more knowledgeable, and hurriedly washed his hands, feet, and arms, and went to the firewood room to fetch firewood and boil water, and then boiled new tea for the guests. Li Ju and the mute each had a modern large capacity marching kettle, which was filled with cold boiled water mixed with salt and sugar. At this time, they only needed to be refilled with water. Li Ju changed into the Yanju silk gauze robe for entertaining guests, put on an indigo-colored gauze crown, held his large-mouthed kettle, found some dried fruits and other things from the warehouse, mixed them together, and packed them into 2 boxes, gave 1 box to the mute, and kept 1 box for himself, and followed to the east wing. Li Ju, Wang, and Zhang sat around the table, while the mute stayed in the outer room. He served tea and snacks to the children and servants brought by Wang and Zhang, and watched them rest together. The 3 of them had all traveled far and wide, and Wang and Zhang had settled down in the imperial capital. They were very familiar with the entire Yanzhou, the 2 roads, the important places in the capital, and the center of the capital, which were exactly the places Li Ju wanted to know. When it came to the north and the experiences from the north all the way to the south, Li Ju was in urgent need, and Wang and Zhang were willing to confide, so the chat was hot and endless. It was not until the dinner at Li Garden that Li Ju personally cooked a feast of local fish, eels, crabs and harvested fruits and vegetables, and invited them to eat and drink for another night. It was not until the next morning that County Magistrate Zhang found an opportunity to tell Li Ju the purpose of his visit. He came here for grain seeds, to find out about the industry, and to get Li Ju support for the seaport. Grain seeds are easy to talk about. Even if Liu Zhang didn't come, Li Ju wanted to send them directly. Because Yu County did not have enough grain, the handicraft industry and commerce developed first. How many people fled Yu County? Not to mention Li Ju was worried. Even Liu Wu and County Magistrate Zhao were also worried about the unstable population that had increased for no reason. Liu Zhang came in person to ask for seeds, and he took the initiative to owe him a favor, which Li Ju couldn't ask for. Not to mention finding an industry. Li Ju was never worried about others learning too much, but that they learned the wrong things. Yu County and Qingshan County are adjacent to each other and have similar climates. Basically, the handicraft industries that Qingshan County can run can also be run in Yu County. It would be a good thing if the 2 places could advance and retreat together, saving a lot of scheduling and allocation problems. The 3rd thing is very difficult. Liu Zhang couldn't even deal with his father, so could Li Ju deal with the emperor? So when Li Ju heard that Liu Zhang mentioned the 3rd thing and was so embarrassed, his first reaction was, is this guy stupid? Old Zhang had his reasons. From the year before last till now, your Qingshan County has done the best in going out to sea. The mountains of gold and silver foreign slaves, and boatloads of them are like mountains and seas. So, when it comes to going out to sea, your county has the most say. If you say it can be done, then it's half done. Does this you really refer to everyone in Qingshan? Anyone with eyes will know that it's you who is being talked about. If I don't ask you, who else can I ask? As for the other half also depends on you. Because the previous dynasty was obsessed with making money with foreign countries, the land used to grow rice was used for weaving, dyeing, kiln firing, and silkworm production. The area in the south of the Yangtze River could not withstand the 2-year famine, and that's why our Tai, Fang, ancestor started the rebellion. When old Zhang mentioned Tai, Fang, Zhu, he bowed his hands and made a salute gesture towards the north and continued, there was a war, and then there was the imperial edict that did not allow us to lift the sea ban in Jiangnan. Now if you want to lift this, you must first pat your chest and guarantee the granary. I dare to ask, brotherly, who else can make such a guarantee except you? Chapter 283 Old Zaire is here. Of course, Li Ju wanted to open a seaport nearby, and there were many options. The carrying capacity of ships in this era was limited, and there was no need for a special deep water port. The entire Lingbei Road and Lingnan Road were full of good seaports, which could be used after a little dredging. There was a small port in Yu County, Qingbo Port, and there were Anlan Port and Guanyin Port in the south, where the 2 counties were adjacent. Opening any of them could greatly liberate the productivity of Yu County. Li Ju said, if we only talk about grain, it is not difficult. This year, the first season was good, and the second season is coming soon. Next year, the granaries will definitely be full. Since the court has ordered that 1 acre of cotton, linen, mulberry, and oil must be accompanied by 10 acres of grain, it is expected that it will be the same under Brother Zhang's rule. Even if there is a transgression, it is only 1 or 2 tenths, and we will not dare to do it blatantly. I'm afraid that this is not a matter of grain, and you and I seem to be not enough to shake the people behind it. To say that you don't want to lift the ban on sea trade is absolutely false. It was secretly opened from the year before last to last year. What was missing in the exchange of goods, money, and talents? Therefore, if Magistrate Zhang wants to get a port for Yu County, the biggest obstacle should not be the port or the maritime ban itself, but the problem lies elsewhere. Li Ju did not understand the situation of the central court and blindly guessed that it was not a political power struggle, but a local struggle. The simplest example is, who does not want to Sealing Bay Road open a seaport? The first is of course the several ports in the north that are ordered to trade by sea. The south is already rich, and there are many generations of sea trade. Once the port in the south is opened, what can the north do? The second is probably the neighboring counties that are almost as poor as Yu County and have no seaports. No one wants to see an old friend who is poor together suddenly become prosperous. In the past 2 years, Qingshan City has been thriving, and the magistrate of Qingshan County has been blamed for it. The third is inland waterway transportation. Once Lingbai, Lingnan and other places open seaports, bulk goods will be directly shipped north by sea, which is much faster than the inland canal. With sea transportation, those who originally controlled the waterway transportation will inevitably be affected. Although it is the early days of the Yang Kingdom, the forces in various places have not yet formed a situation of dominating the sky with one hand. The power of the KO gang will not be too large, but it has definitely taken shape. There are also the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th. Just think about it. They can get along with the ancestral laws, conservative forces, exchange of interests. Various entanglements have led to the current situation. County Magistrate Zhang is a shrewd man. Of course, he also knows what Li Ju means. He said, I think so too. But things are in the hands of people. If I can't do it, I will do it with you. We are not enough. If we bring a few more people, there will always be a day when we will be enough. They have 10,000 reasons to oppose. We fill these 10,000 reasons. They have nothing to say, and we will do it, won't we? As old Zhang was talking, he actually shed 2 tears. Brotherly, you don't know how hard our life in Yu County is. Our place is not like Qingshan City which has many plains. Yu is mostly rocky hills. Normally, if we plant rice, it grows like dogtail grass. There are only a few narrow and rugged flatlands on both sides of the river. We can plant rice there, but it is 10 times more difficult to manage than a whole field. Only 7/10 of our acre of land can actually be cultivated, and the remaining 3/10 cannot be plowed. Also, because we are near the sea, the mudflats are mostly saline and alkaline, and the excess water in the soil cannot support fertilizer, and the roots are easily rotten. Typhoons come from time to time in summer and autumn, and even in winter we are often harmed by wind disasters. The summer is scorching hot and humid, and the winter is freezing and frosty, and the people are really miserable. I want to mention the seaport, not only because I have 3/10 of my own property in it, but also because I want to find a way out for the people under my rule. Old Zhang's words were 3/10 sincere and 7/10 deliberate. He knew what Li Ju's weakness was. He had used this trick last time, when he wanted to connect roads. He used it again without hesitation. Li Ju really liked this idea, and what Lao Zhang said was not wrong. With the opening of the seaport, Yu County will inevitably become a shipping center, and it will also be able to revitalize the livelihood of the nearby states and counties. And there is also a clever trick here. Qingshan County's expertise is manufacturing. Small workshops are also manufacturing, which is the source, and the port is the sales channel. With a one-stop production and sales, it is very simple to bring transportation, raw material production, employment and even the tertiary industry. If Li Ju goes 2 steps further and separates equipment manufacturing from manufacturing, a very complete production system can be formed. A complete production system corresponds to basic division of labor and regional advantages, which has a very good effect on improving the utilization rate of resources. Going forward, consider the issue of introducing new food genes. If he does not go out to sea to send people from 7 continents and 4 oceans to exchange, when will he receive usable population genes? Li Ju is very tempted. Brother Zhang is right. We have to find a way to shake this up no matter what. As the saying goes, if you can't catch any dates, you'll still be fine. What if you can catch them? Li Ju took a pen and paper and drew a piece of land east of Huanan, Huabi, Lingbei and Lingnan, along with the coastline and major islands. Old Zhang and Director Wang helped fill in the administrative divisions, especially marking several seaports, river ports and transportation centers for inspection. Li Ju also added the locations of the surrounding forces such as Yingzhou, Annan, Yuxiang and Kunk, which had close exchanges, and several ports he had heard of, and added the main roads and the wind direction of the ocean currents and monsoon cycles. This made it clear at a glance. Li Ju still felt it was not enough, so he asked Director Wang and County Magistrate Zhang to fill in the basic information they knew about the local specialties, population, number of farmlands, etc. From the above, it really doesn't seem that Yu County has any advantages. On the contrary, Qingshan County to its northeast and Gaohu County to its south are more developed. Qingshan County was established because of Li Ju, and Gaohu County was established because it was the seat of Huajie County. The current governor of Huajie is Zha Junshao, who was appointed this year and concurrently serves as the Sima of Lingbei Road. Last year, a profiteer was struck by lightning in Yu County, and the magistrate of Yu County fell, causing the governor to lose his job. The newly appointed Zha Junshao was transferred from Yanzhou and had a very successful career. His Majesty the Emperor must have wanted to use him, which is why he was promoted from county magistrate to county governor in just 3 years, and was transferred from the north to the south, fearing that he lacked political experience, and was even more afraid that he would not know the common affairs, and would not be a good minister of the court in the future. Li Ju vaguely remembered this person, and heard about him from the doctor who supported the smallpox epidemic into areas of Yanzhou. Seeing Li Ju staring at the emblem of County Magistrate Zha for a long time, old Zhang took the initiative to ask, "Sir, do you recognize him? I've heard of him, but I only know that he is a very talented young man." Old Zhang said, "More than that. He was the top scholar in the 3rd year of Jiqing, and his official disciple is Zheng Shidao. In terms of seniority, he is of the same generation as our Mr. Yu. Although he was born in poverty, he now has a backer and favors. I also admire him very much. Although his master's rules are strict, he himself is also upright. In fact, he has 10,000 tricks, but he is very good to us." Old Zhang couldn't help but sigh as he spoke. People like Lord Sima should look down on playboys like us, but he is different. Not only does he look down on us, he is also willing to take care of us. Decades ago, wasn't I an arrogant fool who didn't know what was good for me? Fortunately, Mr. Zha studied in the capital before he passed the imperial examination and took the time to teach us for 2 years, which made us understand some truths. Lao Zhang praised the governor Zha to the utmost and talked about many past events. Li Ju thought that he was indeed a good person, smart, resourceful, upright but not too aloof and annoying, and he could control a little bully from an aristocratic family like Lao Zhang. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284, Awaiting Promotion. This year, Zha Taishao is just 30 years old. He has done a great job in Yanzhou North Road in the past few years. During the smallpox outbreak, Heksha County, which he was in charge of, was the least troublesome. The emperor is very fond of this child, as he is both pragmatic and decisive. Unfortunately, he has no unmarried daughter of the same age, and cannot recruit him as a son-in-law. If he was not afraid of forcing things to happen, Zha Taishao would never be sent to Jiangnan to clean up such a mess. To train him, sharpen him, hone his skills, and enrich his knowledge, you can see that the emperor is so thoughtful. As Li Ju listened, he came up with an idea. "In my opinion, you might as well choose Dingbo Port as the port to be requested for opening, and then ask Zha Junshao to help you to plead for mercy. The Qingbo Port you chose is a new county. Although it can bring some of their county's industries, they will still be strangled by you in the end. But if you choose Dingbo Port, it is at the junction of your 2 counties. He can take care of it, and he is not afraid of being preempted by you. You are thinking about him, and Xia Junshao is happy. This is the first reason you took the initiative to mention it, which means you are willing to make friends with him. This is the second reason, since Xia Junshao is quite appreciated, his words naturally have extraordinary weight. This is the third reason. Liu Zhang was silent. He really hoped that he would get the benefits alone. After Qingshan County developed, he saw what the small broken ferry in Qingshan County looked like. The tidal flats that were once worthless were sold at sky-high prices after being leveled. The price of Director Wang's house increased threefold when he bought it, and it has increased fourfold now. Now, even if he wants to buy, there is no place to sell. So Liu Zhang also wants to make 10 times the money by resettling in Yu County. The key is that he has already spent the money. He bought hundreds of acres of land at Qingbo Port. Although it was all plundered from local grain merchants, the money in his pocket is his money. Liu Zhang's heart was broken. Li Ju saw his thoughts and added, it is also good for Qingbo Port. Ships always have to dock for supplies. If you can't beat the tiger, you can't run away. The rabbit will not run away. As the saying goes, you should take a long-term view. You can't eat all the benefits of the world by yourself, so don't be too greedy. Director Wang also came to his senses and advised, the tall ones eat meat, and we drink soup together. It's also good. I think Mr. Li's idea is a serious idea. Liu Zhang scratched his head and accepted it. As Li Ju said, if Qingbo Port is successful, Qingbo Port will surely rise accordingly. Even if Qingbo Port cannot trade by sea, it can still engage in inland shipping and transshipment, and can still become a subcenter. Otherwise, Liu Zhang would still dare to engage in smuggling. Anyway, the emperor is kind, and will not kill him if he is caught. Liu Zhang said, okay, I will write a letter to the governor when I go back. But, will Brother Li help me with this? The governor and I are not at the point where our words are final. I think it will be appropriate to find you again. Li Ju didn't care, of course. He didn't think his words were important. He only made an agreement with Liu Zhang that, if he could convince the governor's heir to propose the opening of Qingbo Port, Li Ju would write a memorial to support them from the position of the Minister of Agriculture. Liu Zhang thought about the land he bought, and was still unwilling to give up. He also grabbed the charter of the local joint venture, the multicolor overprinting technology of woodblock printing, the ink technology, the oilcloth technology, and the glass firing technology. He said goodbye to Li Ju with satisfaction, and continued to stroll back. Li Ju bid farewell to his new friend, and continued to do his soil analysis in the Imperial Farm. Modern technology is convenient. It can accurately locate the acidity and alkalinity, water, and oxygen content, and the ratio of potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen fertilizers in the local soil. Then, the bones, plant roots, human and animal feces, etc. can be piled or crushed to make various soil fertilizers, which can be released in advance according to the needs of plant growth. The two chemical apprentices who followed them had not even learned the molecular formula, and they got to the reaction formula in one step. They were almost bald, but they still memorized the 4 soil fertilizer methods mainly used by Li Ju. Li Ju also asked them to analyze the soil from other places, and prepare soil fertilizers by themselves according to the needs of plants. Seeing that Li Ju himself was involved, the 2 honest children did not dare to think that this was a waste of themselves, and they also did it in a down-to-earth manner. Li Ju followed them to check all the way, watching them investigate the land of Huangshuang, Xiaohuangshan, Huangshe, Liyuan, and nearby villages, and make sure that they can really do it well, before they can rest assured to let them do it themselves. Because the conditions of the local soil are similar, the methods of adding fertilizers are also similar. The 2 apprentices stumbled and became skilled workers. Skilled workers are good. With skilled workers, more people can be taught. Li Ju can manage a village by himself. If 2 more people come, there will be 3 villages. If the 3 of them teach some apprentices, there will be more villages using soil fertilizer. This is how the ancient viral communication was formed. Before and after the planting of the second season of crops, several soil fertilizer methods spread from the Imperial Farm were quickly promoted. Combined with the needs of various crops for different fertilizers at different stages such as germination, rooting, pulling, leafing, flowering, and fruiting, as summarized by the students of Yufu's biology course, as well as the performance of crops when lacking certain fertilizers. A set of summaries for the use of soil fertilizer methods was summarized, which became the focus of Li Yuan's last extreme teaching this year. People who make a living by farming tried every means to come to Li Yuan Academy and the Imperial Farm to listen to the lessons. In order to learn this set of fertilization methods earlier, those who rushed to sign up almost broke their heads, and finally the county government had to allocate extra people to maintain order. Li Ju took care of the Imperial Farm while taking classes. In addition, he had so many industries in his hands that he needed to deal with some things from time to time, so he was very busy for a while. As soon as he got busy, Li Ju wanted to give up. When he wanted to give up, he remembered, oh, Sanji who went to Jinling, Yaoniang was in charge of music clothing store and Li Yuan's general affairs, and had to look after the textile factory when she was free, not to mention the two businessmen. They basically didn't stay in Jinling much. Fu Xiaogi had to manage the daily courses of Li Yuan's family school, and there were three major things: express delivery, animal husbandry, and bicycle and parts assembly lines. At the same time, he had to complete his studies. Both Li Ju and his father-in-law hoped that he could pass the imperial examination. Even Wang Dechen and Wu Guangjia, who already had their main duties, had to take care of Li Yuan's soap skinning and the oil pressing workshop in Huangshan. Not to mention Yu Fu and Huang Zhi. They were not the material to run the industry. If they were allowed to run it, 10 Li families would not be enough to compensate. After all the calculations, the reliable ones, such as Suzy and others, were all operating at full capacity. Jeteng and Chusan, who were below, were all established, but they had some tasks. It can be seen that talent is the most precious thing in this world. Li Ju spent half the night catching the madman in the house of the Imperial Manor, and the next day he quickly sent people to post notices on various display boards in Li Garden. Li Garden was going to promote a group of managers to take charge of various affairs, including manors, factories, existing industries and future industries, and anyone who met the requirements could sign up. Chapter 285 Striving for the Top. As soon as Li Yuan's notice of promoting talents was posted, it spread all over the streets and alleys, and even the road construction team that was still planning and mapping the road between Yu County and Qingshan knew about it. For a time, people in Qingshan County were talking about it. Even County Magistrate Wu took time to meet Li Ju and joked with him, "Your Excellency's recruitment is really a grand event. There are more people eager to take the exam than those who take the county exam every year. The county exam is the first of the children's exams, and the children's exams are the starting point of all imperial examinations. It is conceivable that many scholars will take the county exam every year." Now Li Yuan's notice of promoting talents can be compared with the county exam in terms of excitement. County Magistrate Wu had to marvel. Li Ju didn't believe it, and just thought he was joking. Li Ju's selection of talents this time only targets those who have signed a contract with Li Yuan for more than 2 years. Those who have not signed a contract for less than 2 years can participate in the selection, unless they have very outstanding talents. And once selected and become the manager of a certain industry, they must sign a personal contract with Li Ju for at least 20 years. Unless Li Ju is willing, the other party can leave. Li Ju originally did not want to sign this thing. That was almost like a contract to sell his body, but thinking of Yu Yaoniang's unexpected retreat, he decided to sign it. At most, the conditions can be more flexible, stipulating that the two parties can terminate the contract after friendly negotiation, stipulating the compensation for Li Yuan's breach of contract, and of course stipulating the compensation for the other party's breach of contract. The locals do not understand this kind of contract, and only think of it as a contract to sell their bodies, so this contract is more binding. There are hundreds of people in Li Yuan now, and there are about 200 people who have been in Li Yuan for 2 years. Almost all of these 200 people are very tempted. There are also people who have not entered Li Yuan. Some of them think that they are smart enough. Working for their own boss is also a fight, so why not go to Li Yuan to be a manager? Just look at Miss Zhao Sanjiu, a widow, who also cleaned up such a large industry under the protection of Li Ju, and now has moved to Jinling, and become a female rich businessman. Others thought that Liyuan couldn't have only this much industry. Look at what Liyuan was like 3 years ago. Look at what Liyuan is like now. And think about what Liyuan will be like in the future. In 2 years, the position of manager may be expanded tenfold. If they join Liyuan now, they can apply for the job when the recruitment is expanded in 2 years. The most important point is that Li Ju never cares about gender or origin when hiring people. As long as they are adults and not yet retired, he dares to hire them. The women in Liyuan have always been able to take charge of their own affairs. When the textile factory recruited workers, female workers were the first to enter. So the young wives and girls in Kingshan City are also full of expectations. Now only some pedantic old scholars will shake their heads and sigh, saying the world is going downhill and people's hearts are not ancient and hens crow at dawn and ruin the family business. Ordinary people can't care so much. Kingshan City is full of opportunities. Other people's wives are working, and other families can earn an extra 20 or 30 taels of silver a year. If your family doesn't go, your family will be poorer than others. The reason is so simple. In an era when 80% of people can't afford clothes, if they can earn an extra 20 or 30 taels of silver, everyone is scrambling for this opportunity. So who cares about men and women? Besides, Master Li is an oversized virgin, someone that even Miss Yaoniang from the Dayan society can't get, and Zhao Sanjiu doesn't even bat an eyelid when she's next to him. Are other women more delicate than Yaoniang, or prettier than Sanjiu? Those two can't make Master Li tempted, so how can others compare? For women, there is no safer place than working with Master Li. The steward of Li Garden is very well off, because according to the established practice, Li Ju will give dividends from a certain proportion of the industry that each steward is responsible for. Although the wages paid by Li Yuan are average now, which is only a little higher than the general wages, and not so high that everyone is willing to work hard for it, but as a steward, there will be dividends. The dividends are definitely enough. Li Ju did not announce the results of the distribution of industries, nor did he set any requirements for the number of selections. He thought that he would recruit as many people as possible and arrange things according to the selected people. It would be in time to reorganize the industries at that time. For example, Dayan society will soon merge with printing workshops and journal writing companies, and the animal husbandry industry will be differentiated into breeding and breeding departments that cooperate with biology and veterinary departments that cooperate with doctors. All of these are already in Li Ju's optimization plan, and he will start as soon as the personnel are in place. Corresponding to this excitement is the sudden rise in people's enthusiasm for learning. Li Ju clearly told everyone that this selection will have 3 major links: written test, policy essay, and interview. The written test is an ordinary test, and the test questions are to be determined. Anyway, it is definitely required to be able to recognize and write. The policy essay has 2 parts. You have to choose the things and fields you are best at to make a statement, and you have to write an experience about operating the industry. The interview is that those who have passed the first 2 levels will sit down and talk with Li Ju, and Li Ju will ask special questions based on the policy essay written by the other party. If you have passed the above 3 levels, it is an internship. Only those who pass the internship assessment can really become the manager of a business. As for the evaluation criteria, Li Ju chose a blind evaluation and did not make it public. This time, Li Ju forced everyone to take the written test, which undoubtedly greatly raised the threshold for participants. However, people who have worked in Li Garden for more than 2 years can basically recognize words. This requirement is a bit high, but not too high. Li Ju specifically noted that pinyin can be used to replace words that cannot be written, which further lowers the threshold. People who have been brainwashed by Li Garden's display boards for nearly 4 years should recognize a few words anyway. These days, people in the city who are interested in participating in the selection are secretly competing with each other. They have to learn to write, even when they light oil lamps at night, and they have to ask each other about experiences in running industries when they work together during the day, for fear that they will fall behind others. In fact, there are some old-fashioned people in the city who are not so poor and have opinions about Li Ju, such as Song Laozan, who was a guide for Wu County Magistrate before and was taken in by Wu County Magistrate. Since becoming a full-time guide, Song Laozhen's family has been getting more and more prosperous. Later, he was ordered to work for Magistrate Wu. Song Laozhen's status was different from other hangers-on and runners, and he gradually had some property. Song Laozhen's wife and daughter, like other girls from small families in the city, also took some short-term jobs outside to supplement the family income. The short-term jobs that the big and small wives in the city like to take the most were the work of making clothes at Musi clothing store. Musi clothing store used a standard assembly line method, and the measurement, design, plate making, cutting, sewing, and finishing were all handed over to different people to do. Many simpler odd jobs would be broken down. The more common ones were sewing and finishing, such as embroidery, beading, and overlocking, and occasionally there were special small jobs such as rubbing peacock thread and duck wool. Getting a job from Musi clothing store was a very proud thing for everyone, which meant that their needlework skills were recognized by Li Yuan. When they gathered together to work, if anyone said, "I'm doing the work of Mrs. Zhao," or "I'm doing the embroidery work of the Li family," they would immediately get a lot of envious eyes. So much so that now, when women propose marriage, matchmakers often use the girl does needlework, embroidery, for Miss Zhao as a plus point for the woman. In addition to the needlework of Musi clothing shop, the next best job is Li Yuan's own quilt processing. Li Yuan has to give several sets of clothes, quilts and mattresses to its long-term and short-term workers every year. If all of them are made by its own people, it will never be done in a lifetime. Moreover, as the people of Li Yuan continue to update their knowledge and technology system, fewer and fewer people rely on simple labor to get paid, and everyone has taken more advanced positions. Therefore, every year, at least 3/4 of the quilts in Li Yuan have to be sewn by outsiders. Song Laozhen's wife and daughter mainly take on these jobs, especially his wife. Because of County Magistrate Wu, Song's wife has some contacts with County Magistrate Wu's wifey, and with the help of she can get some work from Musi clothing shop. Chapter 286. Changing faces like changing the sky. Usually, the Song family's daughter-in-law and wife worked under the shade of the tree at the back door of the house. They were with the women from the neighborhood. They talked and laughed together, and the day passed by. They didn't feel bored while working. When Song Laozhen came back from his errands that day, he habitually turned to the back door to take a look. Only his daughter was quietly doing needlework under the tree. Suddenly, Song Laozhen felt a blockage. He looked at the house, and saw that his wife was walking around in the room, muttering to herself, holding a book in her hand. Song Laozhen slammed the door panel, swung the things in his hand on the table, and finally sat on the bed, hitting the bedboard and vibrating it. The noise was so loud that even the people outside the back door could hear it. The neighbor's sister-in-law started gossiping quietly. "Mrs. Song, what happened to your father? When he left this morning, my family said that your father was in a very good mood and had taken a big job that paid 100 yuan a day." Mrs. Song was only 12 years old. She knew something, but didn't understand it very well. She said softly, "Mom is learning to write." Dad said that Mom is arrogant. At this time, those who were learning to write were most likely preparing to apply for the Lee Garden selection. For a while, everyone was envious and jealous. One person said, "Mrs. Song is not from Lee Garden. Would she sell herself for 2 years for this?" Another person said, "She is already this old, but she is still doing all this. The men at home don't care about her, and she doesn't teach her children. She is also a woman. Yes, she is really restless. Isn't a woman's duty to take care of the family? She goes out to compete with the men for food. How can she be decent? Mrs. Don't learn from your mother. She has no conscience when she is old. Your father is such a good man. What is she dissatisfied with? She is still angry with your father. They dare not and are unwilling to say bad things about Li Ju, so they can only blame the daughter-in-law of the Song family for not observing her husband's virtue and showing up in public." Mrs. Song bit her lip and did not speak, responding blankly. Everyone was chattering when suddenly a young girl ran in from the alley in trance and said in a cheerful tone, "Several female teachers in Lee Garden are going to open a girls' school to teach us girls. There are only 4 female teachers in total. Sisters, hurry up and grab a spot." She called out twice, and seeing that everyone was still stunned, she hurriedly explained, not to mention, whether you can learn to write, it's your character, that they let you slip the question. After all, you are Mr. Lee's confidant, there is nothing she doesn't know. The woman with the sharpest tongue said, it's useless for us to listen, they only want to sign for 2 years. The young girl said, hey, that's a long time ago. Miss Yu begged for mercy, and the master relented, saying that those who have worked part-time and odd jobs in Lee Garden in the past 2 years will also count. As long as you have not stolen, missed work, or embezzled, you can be treated as a long-term worker in Lee Garden. So, most of us sisters can go and sign up. Everyone suddenly realized what was going on. The aunts and uncles who had just criticized Madam Song for not thinking about things outside ran away in an instant, fearing that they would miss the class if they fell behind. Madam Song sighed blankly, carried the small basket and walked home. She first saw her father tossing and turning in the east room, and then saw her mother reciting in the west utility room. The young lady said to her father, the eldest master's housekeeper is going to teach everyone. I heard that she will leave questions for the students. Her father just hummed. The young lady said again, Aunt Heo, Sister Lao, Sister Wu, and Sixth Aunt are all there. Her father's humming stopped for a while. The young lady said, Sister, you can get an extra 100 taels of silver from the shop every year, which is enough for my brother to study. Her father couldn't sit still anymore. He jumped up, rushed to the west room, pulled his wife out, put on her coat, and pushed her out. Don't worry about whether you will be laughed at, or if there is anyone to cook for you. With an extra 100 taels a year, you can hire a few more maids to cook for you. Isn't it just a free meal? It's delicious, so why bother? In this way, the people of the right age in Kingshan City were in a turmoil for nearly a month, and Li Yuan finally started the exam. Li Ju used writing as the first requirement for the exam, and selected Xiaolian, Yu Yaoniang, Chusan, Wang Dechen and Fu Xiaogli as examiners. Anyone who could write down a sentence the examiner said in front of the examiner would be qualified. If the qualified person has signed a contract with Li Yuan, just record the name, age, and residence. Those who have not signed a long-term contract with Li Yuan will be asked to wait for a while, and Yu Yaoniang's Hang will draw a simple portrait of him, and the portrait will be registered together with his identity. After 7 or 8 days of busy work, those who passed the test were summoned to the school for the first general course exam, which tested their understanding of Li Yuan's family rules and legal provisions, as well as their character in dealing with people, and dealing with people. After this class, the next class is policy discussion. Each person chooses 2 to 3 industries from the industries selected by Li Ju as the basis for the discussion, and expounds on his understanding and ideas of industrial management. There is no standard answer for this. Li Ju spent 2/4 of an hour before the test to explain the basic business philosophy. He intended that in the end, he would test their aura and understanding. After these 2 classes, in Wu County Magistrate's mansion, his eldest son was almost a month old. Because the 3rd round was an interview, the test questions had to be drawn from the test taker's answer sheets, and it was impossible to come up with questions in a few days. And it was almost the busy farming season, and every household had to devote their energy to the family business. Li Ju simply postponed the interview time to the time after the new year when everyone was resting. He could also take advantage of this gap to find someone to inquire about the character of several seeded players he was not familiar with, so as not to recruit ungrateful people from outside. Searching for talent information was naturally presided over by Wang Dechen. Wu County Magistrate specially asked Zhao County Magistrates to help. Zhao County Magistrate and Li Ju had always had a good relationship and came happily. Wang Dechen naturally regarded County Magistrate Zhao as superior. Both of them were local tyrants. One had connections in all walks of life, and the other was familiar with archival materials. When they worked together, they could figure out everything about anyone in the county. Li Ju was very relieved. Since he had sent the 2 of them to help, Li Ju took the time to go to County Magistrate Wu's house to congratulate him. Unfortunately, County Magistrate Wu's child was a very naughty boy. Li Ju sent a gift of congratulations, but he was not as happy as when he got Miss Yuan Yi the year before last. County Magistrate Wu knew that Li Ju liked girls. He complained a few times for his son, but he didn't feel anything in his heart. After the two chatted and laughed for a while, Li Ju went to the study with County Magistrate Wu, leaving the longevity lock for the young master. County Magistrate Wu bowed to Li Ju and said, "Thank you, sir." At this point in time, and just after leaving his son, County Magistrate Wu suddenly thanked him. Li Ju almost thought it was wrong, and hurriedly returned the greeting. "Where is this thank you from? Brother Wu, don't make a fool of me." Chapter 287 Industrial Upgrading. County Magistrate Wu thanked Li Ju because of something that happened a long time ago, which was the harm of inbreeding mentioned in Li Ju's biology and genetics class. County Magistrate Wu's own mother had passed away for many years. Of course, it was not because of anything between him and his cousins, but because of the problems of the girls that his stepmother saw for him. It may be that the relatives on his stepmother's side have more genetic diseases. 5 out of 10 children of cousins are born with diseases. The 4 or 5 girls that his stepmother saw for County Magistrate Wu were all children of cousins who got married. They all died of diseases early, leaving County Magistrate Wu with a reputation of unlucky wife. Even if County Magistrate Wu himself was in the capital, this reputation was often used to tease him. It was just a joke, and County Magistrate Wu didn't think it was a big deal. But if it was related to his offspring, this problem would be a big deal. Before coming to Jiangnan, County Magistrate Wu's stepmother was arranging to find him another girl from her mother's family. After listening to the class, County Magistrate Wu was half believing and half doubting, and replied that he had decided to marry the daughter of a local native and declined. His stepmother then gave the girl to another illegitimate son. This year, I heard from my brothers in Beijing that the girl had some unusual congenital diseases. After the first pregnancy, she had several miscarriages, and it was difficult to keep the baby. The child did not cry or make a fuss when she was born, and died before the full month. Later, the girl had 2 more pregnancies, but both times she had miscarriages within 2 months. With the genetic experiment observation records made by biology students, County Magistrate Wu completely believed in Li Ju's theory, and thanked Li Ju very much. County Magistrate Wu did not tell Li Ju in such details, but only said that, because of his theory, he did not go home to marry his cousin, but married Yu Yaoniang. Now Yu Yaoniang is very good, and gave birth to such a smart son, so he thanked him. If it were not for Li Ju, I'm afraid he would not have met Yu Yaoniang, let alone marry her. Li Ju did not think much about it, but just said I dare not and so on. After the two finished talking about the happy event, County Magistrate Wu turned to ask, "Brother Zion, are the recruitments going smoothly?" Whether it's going smoothly or not depends on the relative situation. If you are talking about people like Sanjiu and Madam Zun, there is indeed no discovery this time, no one. But if it is people who are honest and capable of working, there are 5 or 6. In short, there are 17 people who have come to the interview stage. As long as half of them can be interviewed, it will be enough for the time being. We will see what happens in the future later. Li Ju told him the number of people, and then asked, "Brother Zion, why did anyone complain about this suddenly? Not only the old-fashioned people in the county school, but even my long-time attendant complained a few words. This is strange. I can understand that the unconventional ways here make the school unhappy, but why does Brother Zion's long-time attendant also have complaints? Does he think I'm disturbing the people? It's almost like disturbing the people. You promote managers regardless of gender, including the old woman who serves as a servant." He said that there are many wives who study day and night like his wife, to prepare for the exam, and inevitably neglect the family business. They blame you for disturbing their family's affairs. Li Ju heard this, and laughed it off. Regardless of gender, age or age, it is not a bad thing to learn more. If they are unhappy, because their wives or husbands are willing to learn, then he can't do anything about it. He can't stop them from making progress, let alone let them always lack people. As for the issue of men and women, it is no longer a problem in Kingshan, where the atmosphere is becoming more and more open and women often travel far to do business. If there is a problem, it is just that the couple can't distinguish between internal and external affairs. Wu County Magistrate said, "I'm not afraid of anything else, I'm only afraid that they will collude with the teacher to go to the county government to sue you for being immoral, etc. To prevent this, you can ask me to be a witness during the interview." You need a witness anyway. In order to prevent being accused of corruption, Li Ju invited more than one witness to invigilate each exam, and Zhao County Magistrate came 3 times. If someone wants to go to the county magistrates to file a complaint, the weight of a county magistrate is indeed not enough. Wu County Magistrate is willing to take action. Which is the best? Li Ju said nothing, first thanking him for taking the initiative, and then thanking him for the pressure he will have to bear later. County Magistrate Wu said, "What's the big deal? My government affairs still need your attention. If they really ruin your business, wouldn't it ruin my business? Do I still need my assessment and promotion? Helping others is helping myself. What's more, I'm not helping others, but my brothers." Not long after, Li Ju heard from Director Wang that several teachers in the county were planning to go to the prefecture to complain to the instructors and professors. Because they heard that the subsequent interview was personally supervised by County Magistrate Wu, they quietly dispersed. It was also heard that after several teachers dispersed, they went home and beat their chests and complained. If they had known that Li Ju's questions were so simple, they should have let their servants and book boys try. What if they could get a job with 100 taels of silver a year? Li Ju selected talents on a small scale for the first time, and selected a total of 8 people who were suitable and reserved. With these 8 people, plus the original confidants, Li Ju could finally rearrange all his properties. Li Ju divided all industries according to the structure of modern comprehensive group. Sole proprietorship and joint venture were divided, equity was demarcated, and the financial, accounting, system operated independently. Wang Dezhen was assigned 6 apprentices, and all 7 of them, master and apprentice, were acquired by Li Ju to learn arithmetic and basic finance every day. Wang Dezhen also served as the hours and Li Ju left 2 vacancies for him as apprentices to select suitable talents. Technology and management were separated in each sub-industry, and Li Ju was responsible for all the people, affairs, finances and materials on the technology line. However, because Wang Dezhen had a very sharp eye, Li Ju asked Wang Dezhen to be responsible for selecting talents, and Li Ju was only responsible for whether the people selected by Wang Dezhen met the technical requirements. Management affairs were another line, which was ultimately handled by Sanjiu. Sanjiu appointed Yu Yaoniang and Gizi as assistants in Jinling, and this time, 5 people were selected to add to this line, all girls, including Song Laozhen's wife, Dasong. Li Ju's requirements for Sanjiu are that they should be both efficient and revitalized, that they should not exploit long-term workers and professional workers, that they should not hinder people in the technical line from impacting new technologies, but that they should not be deceived and become money-making tools for others. The last one has actually been shown. Li Ju has always spared no effort to support craftsmen in innovating technology, but as time goes by, it is inevitable that some people will treat him as a fool, lie about the price and amount of materials, say that the experiment failed when there was no experiment, and so on. Of course, Li Ju himself does not have time to check them one by one, and a team of people is needed to pay attention to them. In this way, the 3 lines of technology, finance, and management are clearly separated, and then the upstream and downstream industries and related connections are arranged, with those with upstream and downstream relationships put together, and those with close relationships put together, so that it is clear at a glance how many management positions there are, and how many people are missing. Li Ju incorporated the land of Liuan and Huangsheang into the school, and he managed the school himself, taking the lead in financial affairs and technology to ensure that the status of the school is not shaken. The lands of Huangsheang and Liuan were later renamed experimental fields, which were used to test various agricultural technologies. In addition to the school, the entertainment sector after the merger was controlled by Li Ju himself, which was the day in society plus the printing workshop plus the attached writing club of the printing workshop. Li Ju attached great importance to the expression of ideas. In the eyes of most people, this was putting the cart before the horse. Who would give up financial power and only hold on to the opera troupe? A small number of very savvy literati could see that Li Ju valued the school and the printing workshop, but no one understood why Li Ju was so nervous about the opera troupe. In the public psychology, 100 opera troupes are not as good as a printing workshop. Printing books is for intellectuals to read. the 4 books and 5 classics printed, are the words of saints, but the opera troupe is a low-class thing. Even though they wrote poems and songs one after another to defend Yaoniang, and even though they were excited and enthusiastic when they chased after Yaoniang, Ko Xingxiao, Xinhang, and Zarawa, in their hearts, there was still not much difference between the actors in the opera troupe and prostitutes. They were all toys that entertained people with their sex life, and they were not even considered human beings. Therefore, Li Ju's emphasis on the opera troupe seemed very abrupt and strange. Chapter 288 I made money while lying down. Those who thought that Li Ju's emphasis on the opera troupe was strange included not only ordinary people and scholars from outside, but also people from Liyuan. Even Sanjiu and Wu Guanjia, who obeyed Li Ju's words, could not help but think that this was just Li Ju's willful love of listening to opera. Yaoniang in the opera troupe still had a glimmer of hope, hoping that Li Ju was reluctant to let go because of the girls in their troupe. Even if the girl Li Ju liked was not her, she would be happy. It seemed that Li Ju, who liked a girl, was immortal, and was no longer the elusive Master Li who was high above. If Master Li was immortal, then she might be able to touch him. Li Ju didn't think so much. He simply felt that a play could influence more people than a book, so he had to hold the opera troupe in his hands. In the Great Yang Dynasty, except for Qingshan County, there was no other place in the world with a literacy rate of more than 30%. Only 1 or 2 out of 10 people could understand a book, but a play could be understood by 80% of people. Entertainment things can spread ideas unconsciously in the spring breeze and rain, which is the most terrifying thing about it. No matter how others evaluate it, Li Ju will never let go of these 3 places. The school represents the development direction of the doctrine, the printing workshop carries the spread of the doctrine, and the opera troupe affects the thoughts of the people. As long as Li Ju wants to push the world towards his goal, he must consider things at the cultural and ideological level. After completely stripping off the chores on his body, Li Ju gave Wang Dechen and his 7+2 apprentices a half-month financial training, unified all the account books and bills, and taught some accounting methods, and then he was relieved to entrust all the industries. Wang Dechen was very stingy, and the bonus for the craftsman came from Li Ju's personal account. The largest expenditure was borne by Li Ju, and the rest was handled by Wang Dechen. Presumably, there will be less waste and misreporting in the future. In the end, there were still a dozen vacancies, but none of them were particularly critical. They were all tools for old workhorses. They could not be filled in a short time, and there was no need to rush to fill them. Just wait for the next generation to grow up. After the candidates were assigned, Yaoniang and Gizi, who were named by Sanjiu, discussed that Yaoniang would stay in Qingshan City to handle the chores of Qingshan City, while Xiaolian and Gizi went to Jinling together to take care of the chores of the industry in Jinling. Gizi was newly hired. In addition to her, Song Niang and others were also hired. Song Niang had worked as a part-time worker in music clothing store for more than 2 years. After being hired, she was placed in the position of a foreman in the textile factory for internship, and followed Yaoniang to learn Li Yuan's tricks. The monthly salary during the internship period was 3 taels of silver, and after becoming a regular employee, it was 5 taels of silver. The dividends were calculated according to the annual plan of the textile factory, ranging from 10 taels to 10 times. After this, Song Lao San's back became straighter. Even if many people said sourly that he was not as good as the old woman, he didn't care. Song Niang had a decent job and made a lot of money. He just ate meat and drank wine while lying down. What did he care about what others said? Others said, your wife is going to be a wild woman. Song Lao San, I can earn 100 taels by lying down. Others said, you might as well be a son-in-law of a rich family. Song Lao San, I can earn 100 taels by lying down. Others said, you are really embarrassing for men, being ridden on and peed on by a woman. Song Lao San, I can earn 100 taels by lying down. There was no more to talk about that day. The same situation happened to several other families, because Li Ju gave too much, and the final result was inevitably envy, jealousy, and hatred. Having said that, those who were not selected laughed on the surface, but in fact they secretly worked hard to continue learning, striving to be able to enter the next time Li Yuan selected people. Looking at the speed of Li Yuan's development, I think this day will not be too far away. The excitement in Qingshan County also spread to all directions with various small newspapers, small monthly magazines and gossips, and it was also reported to Jinling before the month was over. People who had dealings with Sanjiu knew that there were indeed a few more people around Sanjiu, and her daughter had been taken to Jinling and temporarily worked as an accountant here, so they believed it very much. But the rumors became more and more ridiculous. When they reached the princess, it was said that Li Ju was dissatisfied with the imperial examination and had set up Li Yuan to select talents. He wanted to compete with the imperial examination of Qingshan, which caused many talented people to neglect their studies and flatter for money. Chen Guiyang certainly didn't believe it. After she and Li Ju resumed correspondence, she asked Li Ju about these things. Chen Guiyang was one of the first few people in Jinling City who knew about Li Yuan's selection of talents, only a little later than Sanjiu and Yaoniang. In the end, Chen Guiyang also knew about the 8 people selected by Li Ju, 4 men and 4 women. Let's not talk about the women, because they were not qualified to take the imperial examination. The 4 men were not from the imperial examination. 3 of the 4 were from craftsmen and could not take the imperial examination. One was a musician of day and society, which was even further away from the imperial examination. Folk musicians were almost lowly people who had been passed down for 3 generations. So when the rumors came in, Chen Guiyang just pretended not to understand. It's not that she cultivates her character and doesn't care about what's happening outside. It's that 3 people make a tiger, and the one who sticks out will inevitably be blown by the wind and rain. When the gossips understood that Chen Guiyang was mocking them for being the wind and rain who slandered and harmed people, they felt embarrassed. Chen Guiyang has now moved to the Yang family's other courtyard to live. Compared with the formal palace, she likes this other courtyard, where personal aesthetics are brought to the extreme more. Shayna gave birth to a daughter last month, and Chen Guiyang liked her very much. Originally, in order to avoid suspicion, Ziking and others planned to send Shayna and her daughter to live in Maoyu Temple next to Yaochen Temple. Because Chen Guiyang liked it, he occasionally sent someone to bring the little daughter to her for a look, and Shayna and her daughter stayed in the Yang family's other courtyard. Liu Shayna, on the other hand, had been wandering for half her life. It was not until the princess took pity on her that she got a chance to breathe. Now she is more cautious in her words and deeds. When Ziking discussed sending her to Maoyu Temple, she was willing and had already found a scripture to read. Although she did not go on the trip, she had already read the Buddhist scriptures and had a desire to leave the world. That day, Chen Guiyang mentioned in a casual conversation that he came here to use his ancestors as an excuse, but it was for the purpose of divorce. Although he had already visited the ancestral tombs and worshipped the ancestral temples, he still felt guilty in the eyes of his ancestors after all. Liu Shayna couldn't help but say, I have an idea. I'm willing to be the princess's substitute and go to Maoyu Temple to recite scriptures for a lifetime, pray for the princess, and practice cultivation. Chen Guiyang was stunned. He first thanked her for her kindness, then picked up a flower and asked, I understand praying for me, but what should I practice? Shayna replied, practice for the next life, cultivate merits, and cultivate cause and effect. Chen Guiyang said, that's not necessary. On the contrary, your life is suffering now, so you should practice for yourself in this life. You are less than 20 years old, and the road ahead is so long. It's like a dead tree there. So he didn't agree, and ordered her to follow him from time to time to experience the fun of mortals. Every corner of the Yang family villa is filled with the tenderness and generosity of the prosperous Jiangnan water town. Whether it is a 7-inch long folding fan with a landscape carved from shells or a 9-layer cut ghost ball, none of them can be bought with money. However, Chen Guiyang has seen many rare treasures and feels that, although these are rare, they can be found in the capital. Her favorite things are the new things that she has never seen in the capital, such as decorative gemstone potted plants, colored glaze windows, and Huan embroidered curtains. Chapter 289, Sanjiu and the Princess First Meeting. The colored glaze windows were produced by Li Yuan. The technology itself was not difficult, but it was difficult to control the color and purity of the fired glaze. Although today's craftsmen can restore the technology, the cost of their own production is much higher than the cost of purchasing from Leon. Therefore, except for a very small number of families with special aesthetic needs, other families who want colored glazed windows directly go to Li Ju to purchase. The Weaving Yang family bought a lot of colored windows. There is a cross-courtyard crystal palace in the other courtyard, which is a Western-style crystal palace. It uses a full 12 colored windows, corresponding to the flowers of the 12 months, which is very beautiful. It is not an exaggeration to say that the current colored glazed windows are a specialty of Leon. Princess Chengyang knew this a long time ago. However, other furnishings were also produced by people from Leon, but Chengyang only found out later. In particular, several Huan embroidered curtains and screens, almost every one of which hit the heart of Princess Chengyang. Chengyang likes Du Fu's poems, Xinjiaxuan's lyrics copied by Li Ju, Li Jian and Su Dongpo, and those embroidery works happen to be her favorite poems, and the pictures they match are also interesting. Princess Chengyang learned that these were all the ideas of Zhao, a woman from Li Garden, and she couldn't help but become very curious about this person. Later, she learned that this person was now managing the industry in Jinling, so she ordered Sanjiu to come and see. Sanjiu became more and more courageous and fearless. That day, she dressed up and calmly responded to the summons to pay her respects to the princess. Chengyang was also a 100% beauty dog. When he saw a beauty like Sanjiu, he immediately liked her. Chengyang felt that this person was not only very beautiful, but also very knowledgeable. Her conversation and demeanor were not like those of ordinary people. Chengyang led Sanjiu to sit down in his inner study. The two started talking about the embroidered curtain, and talked about poetry, lyrics, and local customs. The more they talked, the more speculative they became, so they simply kept Sanjiu 40 in chat. The two soulmates that Princess Chengyang met in her life were Li Ju and Sanjiu. However, Chengyang and Sanjiu have some differences in their interests. Sanjiu is a down-to-earth person, which is in line with Li Ju's temperament and Chengyang's preferences. However, Sanjiu's favorite poems are not very similar to Chengyang and Li Ju. Sanjiu has been reading poems for less than 2 years, but now his favorites are Li Bei and Li Jian. Chengyang then asked, "You like the immortal poet, you have good taste. But the ones you like are Let the White Deer Go Among the Green Cliffs and the Phoenix is Soaring in the Sky. But why is the poem embroidered for me fighting hard with a long spear and using only one man for eternity? It's because of a feeling. To be honest with you, Your Highness, I heard from the Internal Affairs Department that you particularly like several books of poems copied by Mr. Li and asked the Internal Affairs Department to buy a copy here. I guessed that the poems Mr. Li likes may be more in line with Your Highness's taste, so I chose these ones." Chengyang asked again, "Mr. Li, do you really like Du Fu's poems and Xinjiaxuan's lyrics more?" Yes, Mr. Li often said that his greatest wish is the same as that of the immortal poet, hoping to build thousands of mansions to shelter all the poor scholars in the world. Is this also what you like the most, Your Highness? Chengyang's face flushed. Suddenly he saw Zai King stopped sewing on the stool and listened to her, and Sanjiu talking with her ears perked up, with a smile on her face. Chengyang turned around quickly, picked a flower from the jewel vase, and held it in his hand, as if the jewel vase attracted his attention. "You are all clever people. I like what you have done. I wonder if you are free to stay with me for a few days?" If it were someone else, they would be very happy to be invited as a guest by the princess as a commoner. Only Sanjiu declined the invitation, because the industry in Jinling had just been taken shape. The gardens had not been cleaned up, the land had not been leveled, and there was still work to do on water conservancy and roads. Every day would be enough to take up 3 days. Sanjiu had to reluctantly decline. Chengyang was a little envious, but also a little jealous. You still have to do these? It doesn't sound like something that an ordinary woman, or even an ordinary person can do. Why does Mr. Li treat you like this? He is not deliberately torturing you, is he? Sanjiu's expression suddenly became more honored and proud. Mr. Li opened a school to teach us. Of course, it is for us to apply what we have learned. Otherwise wouldn't the teacher's teaching be in vain? I have learned the skills, and I also want to do something to live up to the teacher's appreciation. He also teaches you this? Is he only teaching you? The master has taught many people. He teaches in private schools and academies every 6 days. He teaches everything from arithmetic, physics, and medicine. The cowpox treatment that the 2 doctors who went to Yan's How to Save Lives learned 2 years ago was also taught by the master. If people from outside want to listen to the class, they can just come and listen. Except for usly family members who have to study, do homework and take exams. Other people can come and go as they please, and listen as much as they want. The teacher doesn't care. We think that studying is such a rare opportunity, and we dare not slack off. Yu Yaoniang asked, "You are a woman, do you study the same as the men outside?" "It's the same. There is no gender distinction in schoolwork." The master said that only knowledge is not divided by gender, noble or humble. It's funny to say, there are about 30 people in our Lee family who have attended the class seriously from beginning to end, and generally girls learn better. The master said that the best and smartest student is my daughter Yu Yaoniang. But in fact, the gap is not that big. It must be because men are concerned about the family business and have a heavy burden on their shoulders, so they can't devote themselves to it like us. Sanjiu explained to the others, and Yu Yaoniang knew it after listening. People like Sanjiu are also running around outside. She doesn't believe that only men in the Lee family are concerned about the family business. Yu Yaoniang had an idea in his mind, but he didn't show it on his face. He just said, "Good sister, thank you for talking to me for so long. When you have time, please bring me some of your teachings. And these Shojian screens, I like them very much. I beg you to ask the embroiderer to make a few more for me so that I can take them back to the north." Sanjiu agreed readily, took a cart of rewards from Yu Yaoniang, and was sent home by Yu Yaoniang in a grand manner. Since arriving in Jinling, Yu Yaoniang has lived in seclusion and rarely seen guests. Except for Madame Yu, who occasionally met her. Only Madame Yu was summoned once, when she came from Kingshan. Others only saw their faces when they greeted Yu Yaoniang. Zhao Sanjiu returned home with a cart of rewards. Later, the ladies around the princess often came to Zhao Sanjiu to deliver letters. After that, Sanjiu's work in Jinling was much smoother. Those who had been intentionally or unintentionally making things difficult for her seemed to have given up opposing her, because she could meet Princess Yu Yaoniang. When other people saw this, it inevitably aroused suspicion and jealousy. They were all the same. So why did the princess favor Zhao Sanjiu? In terms of merit, everyone was responsible for the display for the princess, and even most people thought that they did a better job than Zhao Sanjiu. Their family was wealthy, and they had a lot of money, but Sanjiu was only gentle and thoughtful, and she was creative, and this creativity was not something that only Sanjiu could bring out. Because Sanjiu had to do things, she was out every day. When she was out, she had to chat with people outside, and when she chatted, she had to talk about why Sanjiu was favored by the princess. Of course Sanjiu couldn't say that the princess thought she was extraordinary because she had studied with Master Li for several years, so she could only perfunctorily say, "Maybe she likes me." It didn't say anything important, a reward, just praising some of the decorations. Yes, those embroidered shoji screens and the like. Others would definitely not believe it immediately, but when they asked around, they found out that the princess did like the embroidered screens, embroidered curtains, jeweled vases and other items that Zhao Sanjiu presented the most among all the decorations, so they couldn't help but believe it. Chapter 290 Who knows a daughter's heart? Princess Yu Yaoniang seldom showed her personal preferences after arriving in Jinling. The few times she praised colored glass windows, it was because they were rare. Even if other families wanted to import them, they didn't have such good colored windows at the moment. But the furnishings were different. There was no need to elaborate on how developed Jinling's weaving was. Who didn't have a unique skill? Zhao Sanjiu's skills were just so-so, not good enough at all. So everyone's mind became active. Since Her Royal Highness likes these exquisite and thoughtful things, they should also pay tribute. They don't ask for any boat or any wind, as long as they can get a little bit of it, and suppress the other families. So after Princess Yu Yaoniang summoned Sanjiu, after a few days, people would occasionally bring in particularly vivid and outstanding embroidery and decorations. To be honest, it was better than before, when they couldn't find any point to flatter and curry favor with her. Princess Chengayang is not very interested in food, clothing and treasures. She has been living in the best of the best since she was born. No matter how luxurious Jiangnan is, it can't compare to the emperor and empress who spend money without regard for cost. Even if there are some ingenuity, it is still the same after all. But these days, you can occasionally see some wonderful ideas, which are much more interesting. Among them is the Yang family. The Yang family is good at weaving brocade, embroidered flowers and kisi, and their skills are at the pinnacle. Before decorating the other courtyard for Her Royal Highness, the Yang family had a whole set of ingenious furnishings, but they lost in the competition with Sanjiu. The Yang family is unwilling to admit defeat. Sanjiu's skills are really good. In terms of handwork, he is equal to his old Yang family. As for the thoughts of furnishings, it's nothing more than poetry, lyrics, essays, and stories. Sanjiu can do it, and so can they. They also have talented women in their family, who can write graceful lyrics and romantic poems, and will never let a country girl be the only beauty in front of people. On this day, Princess Chengayang, about 39, brought the thick cotton and linen blended yarn spun by the water-powered spinning machine in their Lee garden and the cloth woven with this thick yarn and shuttle. The cloth itself is coarse cloth. It would be strange if such a thick thread could be woven into fine cloth. The finished product is fine, thick, heavy and prickly, wear-resistant and durable. Of course, the touch is not as good as fine cloth, but it is far better than Rami. Chengayang likes this coarse cloth very much. It represents a new way of production and more possibilities. Poor families only need a little money to buy this coarse cloth to keep warm. At least it can reduce the number of people freezing to death. As for the impact of cheap goods on the economic system that Li Ju was worried about, Chengayang had not thought so deeply for a while. After all, she only had a cursory understanding of the relevant information on economics, and Li Ju's writing had not yet talked about very profound things. Princess Chengayang was in a good mood and was discussing with Sanjiu what to do with this rough and clumsy cloth. The discussion was very detailed. The maid outside said that the Yang family had sent gifts for the princess to enjoy. The tone and attitude were very respectful. Because Chengayang was currently living in the Yang family's courtyard, they were willing to give them this face. Moreover, the gifts sent were daily necessities, not contraband in the eyes of today's people. Chengayang asked Sanjiu, and Sanjiu just said it was okay. Chengayang asked them to take the things, and gave some money to the senders to send them away. The Yang family knew that the princess did not see outsiders, so they sent Chen Zhen's family to deliver the gifts. In addition to the palace servants brought by the princess, there were also some slaves sent by the Yang family and local officials and wealthy people in the Yang family's courtyard. These slaves were all locals, and they all knew that the weaving Yang family was extremely rich and had connections. Some of them were even servants of the Yang family, and they were happy to do favors for the Yang family. Under normal circumstances, when one family sends someone to greet another family, the messenger can go back after completing the mission, and the other family will choose a date to send someone to thank and greet them, which is called a give and take. However, because Chen Zhen's family has a good reputation, the servants in the other courtyard are willing to serve her, so Chen Zhen's family did not leave immediately after receiving the letter, but had tea in the back room of their servants. The embroidery sent by Chen Zhen's family is a complete set of embroidery made by Yang's family after they were ejected. People who have seen it say that they have not seen such a skill for decades, so Chen Zhen's family is very confident. She took the reward, but did not rush back, just to wait and see the princess's reaction. If the princess wants to find someone to ask for details, she can be the first to come out and report. As an ordinary person, she also wants to compare the pile of furnishings made by Sanjiu. It would be best if Her Royal Highness would be angry because the Ministry of Internal Affairs took the initiative and did not choose their Yang family's idea, but chose Sanjiu's poor design. That would be great. Chen Zhenjia thought of the curtains, screens, and gauze curtains that they had handed in. They were all exquisitely made, with hundreds of kinds of fine workmanship, and they used good poems and words. She was very confident. In the scripts of Chen Zhenjie and even the Yang family, they also used poems, restored the artistic conception of the poems, and used more exquisite skills. Since Her Royal Highness liked the small scene embroidered curtain vase insert restored by the poem scene of Sanjiu, she should like the upgraded version of Yang's embroidery more. However, the situation of Princess Chen Guiyang was completely different from what Chen Zhenjie imagined. While Chen Zhenjie was waiting for news, he was chatting and laughing with several local servants. A little girl who could serve closely inside ran over in a panic and whispered in Chen Zhenjie's ear, "Sister-in-law, go back and ask what's going on. His Highness is not only not happy, but also a little angry." Chen Zhenjie was so scared that his face changed. How could it be? Could it be that the embroidery was delivered to the wrong person? Or is that little bitch playing tricks? The people who were talking around also quieted down, either wanting to watch the show, or because they were really worried about Chen Zhenjie. The little girl said, "These are all words coming from inside. How can we know what they mean? That's why we hurried to tell my sister-in-law's family to ask. Just now, Sister Zhao was still speaking for your family. If it weren't for Sister Zhao's explanation that this was the good intention of my sister-in-law's family, I'm afraid that all the things would have been sent back to the Yang family by now." This little girl was doing rough work inside, in charge of planting flowers and grass. She couldn't go in, so she didn't know the specific situation. Moreover, this time she ran out secretly to report the news, and didn't dare to stay for long. After a few words, she ran away, fearing that she would be discovered to have left the garden without permission. Chen Zhen's family was panicked and helpless. When they wanted to inquire again, they couldn't find the way. Because the princess was very strict with her subordinates, the servants sent from Jinling could only do simple and rough work at ordinary times, and they couldn't get close to the princess at all. It was not easy for the little girl to bring a message to inform the princess of her feelings. She wanted to know more, but she couldn't ask a single word. Everyone knew that the Yang family was reliable and was very surprised that the gifts offended the princess. However, they could not enter the inner room and could not even see the head maid Ziking. They could do nothing to help. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291 Seduction. Chen Guiyang was angry for a reason. Why did she bid farewell to her parents and come to Jiangnan from afar to divorce? The prince consort was sent to live outside, but Liu Shaina and the little girl were still in Chen Guiyang's sight. Chen Guiyang just didn't vent his anger on innocent people, but he didn't forget the origins of Liu Shaina and the little girl. What were the embroidery sent by the Yang family? Either praying for children or loving couples, which hurt Chen Guiyang's eyes. The red silk curtains with a picture of 100 children embroidered by Sioux workers, the quilts with mandarin ducks and lotus flowers, the bed curtains with phoenixes singing in harmony, the small table screen with pomegranate Buddha's hands and brocade with many children and blessings, and the window screens with two cranes flying side by side and weaving gold. That's not all. The 8-panel embroidered character story screens did their best to make the story beautiful and luxurious, but the content was about Nanjiu riding a phoenix, holding a case and eyebrows, Zhang Chang painting eyebrows, and a story of a wife's virtue and husband's glory passed down from the ancestors of the royal family of this dynasty, and the story of two couples' love that only existed in this time and space. In addition to these 6 illusions, there are 2 short stories copied from Li Ju Song Guozhi and 3 Kingdoms. It is obvious that Chen Guiyang used such new illusions because he liked the poems copied by Li Ju and deliberately flattered them. However, they carefully selected the 2 that Chen Guiyang didn't like so much, such as Sun Shangxiang and Liu Ben's double sword dance, and Li Jian and her husband's gambling on books and pouring tea. There is also an ivory carved silver inlay date treasure fan. Not to mention that the story above is a story of Liu Yang's wife breaking the weaving map, which makes Chen Guiyang feel very twisted and uncomfortable. Maybe the Yang family thinks that Chen Guiyang likes poetry and books and will have a good impression of the story of Liu Yang's wife advising her husband, but Chen Guiyang reads not to help her husband and raise children, but to gain something. Let's not talk about the content, but the material. Chen Guiyang herself hates ivory, tortoise, feathers, bones and other decorations that require killing. Not only does she hate them, but the queen doesn't use them much. Chen Guiyang looked at these luxurious tributes and laughed in anger. If Zhao Sanjiu hadn't helped explain a few words and changed the subject to talk about how many craftsmen could be supported by such labor-intensive things, it would be hard to say what would have happened. In the end, Chen Guiyang didn't use these things. He sent the ivory carved 8 treasure fan back and put the others in the bottom of the box. Chen Zhen's family returned to the Yang family, feeling uneasy and not daring to say what was going on. The Yang family didn't know what was going on, but Princess Chen Guiyang still lived in seclusion. Apart from inviting Sanjiu to her house for a small gathering, she would occasionally meet with the women of the Yu family, which was no different from before. The Yang family couldn't help but murmur. Even if the princess felt that such an embroidered gift was not good, she should have expressed it in some way. Before, the people of Jinling sent the princess earthenware and other things, and the princess also responded. Why is there no movement this time? The Yang family murmured for a few days, and it was still the senior official of the Ministry of Internal Affairs who was responsible for the princess's divorce that quietly gave some hints. He didn't dare to say that the princess wanted to divorce her husband, nor did he dare to say that the husband was a scum who forced another woman to have a child. He vaguely said that the things sent by the Yang family were very good and beautiful, but the subject matter was not right. It was not uncommon for couples to be incompatible, and it was even more common for royal couples to be incompatible. The Yang family suddenly realized why the whole set of hundreds of sons and thousands of grandchildren embroidery that his family was proud of at the beginning did not even qualify to participate in the competition. Of course, in addition to the fact that the marriage was not good, which caused Chen Guiyang to have a grudge against having many children and grandchildren and harmonious husband and wife, the deeper reason was that Chen Guiyang now hated the life that was limited to supporting the husband and raising children more and more, and envied Sanjiu who met a mentor and was radiant with moving brilliance. Chen Guiyang was not unwilling to support her husband and raise children, but she wanted to have a choice. She wanted to choose her own destiny, whether to support her husband or which husband to support. These are all negotiable, but if there is no choice, it will not be beautiful. Chen Guiyang recalled Li Ju's reply to her last year, in which Li Ju asked her, she has no choice but to be a concubine. Is this what she wants? At that time, Li Ju was talking about Liu Yaoniang, but Chen Guiyang thought it through and found that in fact, this question was not a problem for her. It just so happened that Sanjiu showed her another life, which was another free experience that Chen Guiyang could not help but envy. Sanjiu has been busy these days preparing to build the Li Garden in Jinling. From buying houses and land, opening shops and repairing houses, to planning industries and recruiting soldiers, she has done it all by herself. Chen Guiyang saw the whole process as if she had contributed to all of this, so she couldn't help but help her. Sanjiu was grateful, but she felt that Princess Chen Guiyang was indeed very different from others. If she could only be buried in the boudoir, it would be a waste of Chen Guiyang's talent. One day in late October, the weather in Jiangnan changed suddenly. Sanjiu was afraid that Chen Guiyang didn't know how cold and damp it was here, so she brought the design drawings of the fumigation cage and floor heating that Li Ju had improved to facilitate drying clothes. Chen Guiyang knew that it was damp and cold here, but there was nothing she could do. The fumigation cage and floor heating sent by Sanjiu were exactly what she needed. Chen Guiyang called the accompanying officials and asked them to communicate with his female officials about the renovation of the greenhouse, but said to Sanjiu, your master is really amazing. He even knows how to use this kind of heating. I think the principle is similar to the heated kang in northeast China. Has your master been to northeast China? Sanjiu smiled and said, the master often said read 10,000 books and travel 10,000 miles. We don't know whether he has been to northeast China, but the master must have a lot of wonderful ideas. Invite your highness to visit my humble home one day. There are so many strange and useful things. Things like artesian water and greenhouses. I have never heard of them before. Read 10,000 books and travel 10,000 miles is an illusion of Dufu. I really envy you. You can see the scenery that Mr. Lee has seen without leaving home. Besides, you are not a person who stays at home. I'm afraid that you have traveled more roads and met more people than me. Sanjiu laughed again. Why should Princess be envious? Your highness is already in Jiangnan anyway. Is there any official with a higher rank than your highness in the whole of Jiangnan? If not, princess, you can make your own decision and go out to travel. Who can stop you? Chen Guiyang had thought about going to the people, but her every move was very important. As the saying goes, the emperor has no private affairs. If it's possible, of course I'm willing to go. I really want to see your school and listen to his lessons. But my every word and action is under the watchful eyes of the public. What can I do? Sanjiu was very tempted when she heard this, and she even had some thoughts of striving for it. It's not that I have ill intentions and want to lure the princess out. I'm a reckless person and I should have some daring plans. Please listen to me and smile. I think that first of all, the princess lives in seclusion and people outside can never find out about the princess. Even if they know that the princess is out, how can they spread the news of eavesdropping? It is better to find out the person who leaked the news and punish him. Okay, your highness just said that they were spying on the phoenix carriage. How can they refute it? Secondly, if your highness really shouldn't go out, then they dare not and cannot know that your highness has left the palace. Your highness is as a princess. Even if she made some minor mistakes, they were just some gossips behind her back. How could she be held accountable? Whether they were angered or silenced, they would have to suffer anyway, so they might as well cover up for you. Do you think this is a truth? In fact, there is a third point. In the first half of this year, we were sent by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Jinling Prefecture to arrange furnishings and renovate gardens. We have cleaned up at least 7 or 8 gardens. That means there are 7 or 8 places where Her Royal Highness can live reasonably. So who knows if Her Royal Highness left here and went to another residence. Even if we can't find it, we can just say that she built another palace, which makes sense. Chapter 292 Folding Fan. Jiangnan has beautiful scenery, which is completely different from the imperial capital. Every garden is worth visiting. However, no matter how beautiful a garden is, it is impossible to visit it for 3 years without getting bored. Even if Sanjiu did not make suggestions at this time, Chen Guiyang would find a way to do something for herself in a short time. In the past, in Beijing, Chen Guiyang could walk around, hold banquets, visit relatives and friends, but in Jiangnan, she could only stay indoors and had no choice but to be bored on weekdays. Chen Guiyang had not thought about the distant future, but Sanjiu's suggestions reminded her in advance that there was another way to live. Chen Guiyang said, "You are right. Besides, I heard that you have a grand show in Lee Garden every New Year's Eve, and I really want to go and see it. It happens that you are here, and you must go back to Lee Garden before New Year's Eve. If I can go with you. Wouldn't that be just what I want?" Sanjiu smiled and said, "If it really works, then our Lee Garden is really lucky. It should be me who is lucky. If it weren't for him, I might not be who I'm today." Chen Guiyang stood up, paced back and forth in the room, and thought of everything. "I have to trouble you to prepare some men's clothes for me." Before Chen Guiyang got married, she often dressed as a man when traveling near the capital. Now that she wants to go out incognito, she thinks of men's clothes as usual. Sanjiu replied, "I'm sorry to trouble you, but what style, material, and color do you want, your highness?" Chen Guiyang didn't care much. "You usually make men's clothes for your master? Just make it according to the pattern. I've only been here for a short time and haven't seen many foreign men. Even if there are, they all wear official robes and formal clothes. I don't know what the customs are like. Since I want to integrate into the local community and cannot stand out, what I wear should also be local styles. So just make it according to the usual ones." Sanjiu thought about Li Ju's usual outfit and said hesitantly, "This Mr. Li's temperament is different from ordinary people. Men in Jiangnan love to be coquettish and dress up like women. But our master is different. If I really make it, like I do when I'm old, I'm afraid your highness will dislike it for being vulgar. Chen Guiyang's mind immediately emerged with the image of a local tyrant wearing gold and silver, silk and satin, with 10 rings on one hand. I don't know why, but he doesn't think he is disgusted by such a vulgar appearance. Chen Guiyang smiled and said, I haven't worn such vulgar clothes as you said, so it's a good time to try them out. Zia, ask a few people to help Madame Zhao choose fabrics. If there is none in the warehouse, go outside and get them. We will take care of the bill. Ziking agreed, walked quickly to the door, and called a few maids to give them some instructions. After lunch, a few palace maids from Beijing watched a few local maids pick fabrics for Sanjiu. Sanjiu was not polite at all, and took away 13 pieces of fabrics of various colors. The vulgarity that Sanjiu said was a far cry from the avarice that Chen Guiyang imagined. A few days later, Sanjiu sent a few packages of clothes over, and Chen Guiyang knew what vulgarity really was. All of them were made of coarse cotton, indigo, crimson, dark blue, and fine cloth. The hakama was made in a loose leg style, and had to be tied with leggings before going out. The shoes were made a little bigger, with some random silk stuffing inside. The uppers were made of soap-colored oilcloth or leather. The soles were made of paulonia or 1000-layer cloth, and there were dust-proof toes that could be added to the shoes. There were also a few cloaks and saddlebags, which were made of the inventory fabric of Liaji Goods Company. They were all good materials that were light and windproof, and they were also crisp and stylish, making people look taller when they put them on. There were also various men's accessories such as scarves, net scarves, square flat scarves, and head scarves, and the hairpins were all in the shape of ears of grain that Li Ju often used. Chen Guiyang liked the scarves and saddlebags. He was particularly fond of the ear-shaped hairpins, and immediately couldn't wait to hold them at the collar and gesture at them. But those rough cloth robes were beyond expectation, and even made Chen Guiyang blurt out, "Is your master wearing this? Are you guys fooling him?" I was worried that his highness would not be used to it, so I made a few shirts that local scholars like, but they are a little plainer, and the material is the best silk. Sanjiu was busy taking out several other popular robes in tender green and red pine flower colors, and replied, "How dare I fool him? The master started out selling cloth for money. He can't tell the difference between silk, satin, cotton, linen, and wool. If you ask him why he wears like this, it's a long story. I'll tell you slowly when I have a chance." Sanjiu explained a few words, but her hand slowed down. If Li Ju let other people in Li Garden wear rough cloth clothes while he enjoyed silk and satin, I'm afraid the people in Li Garden would not be so convinced of him. All of her people who entered Li Garden were willing to die for Li Ju, and not just for his life-saving grace. Chen Guiyang asked with concern. Sanjiu turned around and smiled. "Nothing, I just thought of the good things of the master again." Chen Guiyang was full of joy and said, "You don't have the final say. I will know after I see it. It's better to do it today than to choose a day. Anyway, everyone knows that you brought people to deliver things today. Why don't I go out with you to take a look?" Sanjiu thought it was a good idea. Chen Guiyang called Ziking to change her makupan clothes. Ziking was worried, so she called the princess's confidant to change her makup together, including Chen Guiyang. There were a total of 8 women, all dressed as men. Ziking was a personal servant of Chen Guiyang, and she didn't see outsiders, so she didn't bring men's clothes with her. The other few people who followed him occasionally had to communicate with the outside world on the way, and they might even be sent out to do things, so they all came in men's clothes. But their men's clothes were all made in the palace, which was very different from the style of Jiangnan. And when they entered the city that day, everyone in the city saw their clothes. If they wanted to conceal their identities, they couldn't wear these. Fortunately, Sanjiu thought ahead and made a few more sets of men's clothes for the attendants to replace them. This made Ziking suddenly realize why Sanjiu took so much cloth at that time. Ziking really deserves to be Chen Guiyang's first-class useful person. After her changes, Chen Guiyang looks like a handsome man with a feminine appearance, not showing any feminine demeanor. Chen Guiyang usually behaves very dignified and serious, without any coyness or tenderness. As long as she doesn't speak or walk fast, she looks no different from an ordinary timid scholar. It was obvious that Chen Guiyang was also very proud of this. She took down the folding fan displayed on the Duobao pavilion, played with a set of fans, and threw them aside, laughing. When I was a child, I often dressed up as a boy to go out and play. This fan was taught to me by my younger brother, but I played it better than him. What do you think? I'm a suave young man. Can I compare with Mr. Lee from your family? Mr. Lee is used to being rough. How can he compare with the elegance of your highness? Sanjiu, Ziking and others all laughed. Chen Guiyang, who changed into men's clothes, was more handsome and bright than her when she was dressed as a princess, as if there was a layer of spiritual light on her body. Obviously, her facial features were still the same, and she was even a little uglier because of the deliberate adjustment of her bone structure. In the eyes of others, she was only dazzling, and people couldn't bear to look away. Ziking and others were trapped in the garden for several months because of their cautious words and deeds, except for 2 or 3 people who had the opportunity to find Sanjiu and took the opportunity to go out. No one else had seen the world outside the second gate. They were going out for a stroll that day, and suddenly everyone was as lively as the magpies on the tree. Sanjiu realized that this group of beautiful female officials, who were usually serious, arrogant, and proud, were actually ordinary people in essence. They also loved to play, laugh, and be free. Just like the princess who was so high and mighty, she was not a clay or wooden Buddha. She had tolerance, pain, reason, and pursuit. She was also a living person. Sanjiu liked people with human touch, preferably with soft spots, so that she could interact with them with confidence. Chapter 293 Hope. After figuring out the tricks of going out incognito, Chen Guiyang began to let herself go. She would take people to stroll around every now and then. She was afraid of being recognized, so she usually didn't go to those prosperous areas. She only wandered around the beautiful mountains and rivers and the common people. She wanted to indulge in the wildness of mountains and rivers and the fireworks of the mundane world. Chen Guiyang saw a few contradictions between the people of Beijing and Jinling. Although her ancestral home was in Jinling, Chen Guiyang grew up in Beijing after all, so she certainly felt more at home in Beijing and always thought that the people of Jinling were delicate and petty. It was not until she left the city and saw the beautiful mountains and rivers and the simple farmers that she felt that there was actually not much difference between the north and the south, and people worked hard to survive. Chen Guiyang gradually sank into the beautiful scenery of the south of the Yangtze River. Her range of activities expanded from the surrounding areas of Jinling to the outside, and she also visited Suzhou, Huaiyang, Songjiang, and Qiantang. It took only 2 months for her to go from leaving home early and returning late to not being at home for several days. The subsequent situation was just as Sanjiu expected. The nobles of Jinling may have noticed that Princess Chen Guiyang's whereabouts were unusual, but because of the estrangement and the desire to avoid estrangement, or because it was better to have less trouble than more, they all pretended not to notice. Chen Guiyang had almost visited the territory east and south of Jinling, and then came to Qingshan City on the pretext of I agreed to go to Li Garden with Sanjiu to see the Li family's New Year's Eve. The cement lane road in Qingshan City has been built to Shannyang County. Although there is only one main road, it is equipped with waterways of rivers and streams, making the transportation of the entire Dasan County much more convenient. The most direct feeling is that from Chunnan County in the north of Shannyang County across the border to Shannyang County, the bumpy feeling of the carriage is obviously much smaller, and the horse runs more steadily. Starting from Jinling, the land and water routes are alternately traveled, and it took only 11 or 12 days to reach Qingshan after walking and stopping. As long as the weather was not too bad, Chen Guiyang would go out on horseback by herself. Sanjiu, who was going back to Qingshan for the new year, would go with her. However, Sanjiu took a horse carriage so she could think about some things and write them down on the way to discuss with Li Ju. Ziking and others who followed Chen Guiyang all came on horseback. On Sanjiu's side, the people in Liyuan either hired a carriage or entered horses and mules together, forming a long and mighty team. Chen Guiyang moved back and forth in the team, slowing down his horse when he saw something interesting, and riding forward when he wanted to take a look ahead. Along the way, the closer to Qingshan, the more prosperous it was. Gradually, the neat and clean houses in the village could be seen. The elderly and children worked together on the roadside to do small businesses, or did some spinning, weaving, and carpentry crafts in the village. The old and the young, all happy and contented, probably was such a scene. As Chen Guiyang was walking, he realized something was wrong. He rode his horse to the side of the carriage, tapped the wall lightly with the whip, untied a corner of his hood and asked, "Madam Zhao, I have something to ask you." San Jiu pushed the door open and poked out a pretty face. "What's wrong? Why are there no adult men in these villages? The farm work is all done by women. It seems that there are fewer women too." Chen Guiyang had also seen some villages on the way south. When comparing them with the villages he had seen, he found the differences. San Jiu said, "Oh, this is because, since the master sorted out the industry a few months ago, a lot of manpower is needed in all aspects. The local people found that they could earn more by managing Li Yuan's industry than by farming, so they went to work for the master. The master called this going to the city to work." Chen Guiyang asked, "I see. Then, wouldn't the fields be barren? And if everyone is willing to work, wouldn't their status change?" "Not really. After all, the roots are still in the land, and the fields at home still need to be cultivated, so they are still farmers. They can use the money they earn from working to buy livestock, better plows, plowshares, and windmills. Things that originally required 3 people can now be done by 1 person. Things that originally required strong men can now be done by young men and women. In this way, a family of 5 can at least double what they can produce." Chen Guiyang understood immediately. That's the truth. In this case, it is better to give each of the 100 families a working ox than to drive 100 businessmen back to farm. Your master sees it very clearly. San Jiu smiled. Li Ju had definitely taken 1 step and looked 10 steps ahead when it came to matters involving grain. If he hadn't thought these things through clearly, he wouldn't have let go of the recruitment. Princess Chen Guiyang had seen some of Li Ju's results from the villages along the road. She paid more attention to the people and customs around her on the following journey. Such careful observations really allowed her to perceive more from the perspective of passers-by. She had known about the road maintenance team, the postal team, and the bicycle tricycles before, but she had only seen them with her own eyes today. The road maintenance team members all wore blue jackets and black vests, hoods, gloves, and knee pads. They carried brooms, iron clamps, drove donkeys, and pulled tricycles with carriages. They patrolled the roadside in teams. Occasionally, there was a team of people singing as they passed by. Chen Guiyang asked, "It's so cold today, and there's a little snow, so do they have to patrol even when it rains or snows?" San Jiu answered, "Yes. Not only do they have to patrol as usual, but they also have to walk more frequently, because it's easier to get into trouble when the weather is bad. Wouldn't that be tiring and cold? Why are they so happy? It doesn't look like they are running for their lives in the cold weather. Because they are running for their lives. Half of the people in the road maintenance team are retired soldiers, and half are people from the villages and towns where this section of the road belongs. Miss Yang, you're very smart. Can you figure out the deeper reasons yourself?" Chen Guiyang sniffed and cast his eyes on a team of people carrying road maintenance flags coming towards them in the opposite lane. The leader was a vigorous uncle in his 50s. After San Jiu's hint, Chen Guiyang judged that he should be from the military, and his blood was still strong even at his age. His temperament was also different from that of ordinary people. He didn't wear a hood to cover his face in the light snow, but only a small 6 combination hat. He was singing a song whose meaning was not clear to him. It was probably in the local dialect. The lyrics were in a rhythm of 3 words per sentence. He sang a sentence, and the people behind him followed. Everyone who sang along was in high spirits, whether they were retired soldiers who were as old as the captain, or young boys, or even a few women in their 40s or 50s. From the small gaps in their hoods, it could be seen that they were in very good condition. The road maintenance team noticed that Chen Guiyang and his team had stopped by the roadside. It was obvious that the host family was a female family, so a man and a woman came out of the team and asked, "Ladies and gentlemen, has the team encountered any trouble?" The guard looked at Chen Guiyang, who shook his hand, and the guard bowed and said, "Thank you for your concern. It's okay. The host family will rest for a while and leave soon." The road maintenance team then said a few more words of concern, reminding them of the distance between the tea sheds and greenhouses in front and behind, and the distance between the villages and towns, and then formed a small team and continued to drive forward. Sanjiu smiled and said, "What do you think, madam?" Chen Guiyang came back to his senses and replied, "Retired soldiers have military power, and this job allows them to use their military power to support themselves. For the locals, maintaining this section of road is like maintaining their own property, so of course they don't think it's a big deal to work for themselves. Moreover, the wages for the job are not low, and it is an honor to have such a job, and they are willing to brag in front of their relatives and neighbors. Adding all these together, it can't be considered a hard job. Besides, it is the slack farming season now, and people who still have to go out seem particularly tired, but it is different from the busy farming season. No matter if it rains, hail, or typhoons, you have to go to the fields. If you don't go on the road, and neither is more or less difficult, it's always a good thing to earn more." I told my wife about what my life was like in the past. If there was a road maintenance team willing to take me in, I would patrol rain or shine. It's not just money, but also a hope to live a decent life. Chapter 294 What I Saw Along the Way. Chen Guiyang and Sanjiu's convoy stopped and walked, talking about the road maintenance team, Kingly Postal Service, bicycles, and the traffic and cargo volume of Qingshan City every day. It took a whole day to walk from Shanyang to Qingshan County. Relying on the documents provided by Chen Guiyang, they opened the closed city gate. They arrived in the city 3 days later than originally scheduled. It was already the 18th day of the 12th lunar month, and Qingshan City was still very lively after the curfew. After taking office, County Magistrate Wu petitioned to change the time and strategy of the Qingshan City curfew. The time was postponed to the hour of hay. The strategy was to only close the city gates, not the market, and of course, the shops and wine shops would not be closed. However, the yamen runners would pay special attention to gatherings of more than 4 people, and would escort a single pedestrian for a while. There were many yamen runners in Qingshan City. In addition to the fixed number yamen runners, which can be understood as formal establishment, there were also non-fixed number auxiliary yamen runners, temporary workers, who were expanded after Li Ju proposed. At first, County Magistrate Wu felt that it was a bit too bloated and cumbersome to support so many people, but because he trusted Li Ju, he still recruited some retired soldiers from the army that was changing guards according to Li Ju's advice. Soon he felt the advantage of expanding the recruitment of yamen runners, and his government orders were implemented smoothly, and he was no longer in a state where he could not even leave the county town. What clans, rural prestige, and local sages all collapsed easily in front of the yamen runners who represented the officialdom. The civilians of this era were afraid of officials, and were naturally inferior to the yamen runners. The reason why government orders were not sent to the countryside was more because there were not so many clerks who could exercise the power of management, which gave the clan family, a small unit, room to operate. Qingshan County had very high tax revenues, and the county government itself was also involved in some lucrative industries such as maritime trade. It could be said that it was rich. It happened that the soldiers recruited during the founding of the country were about to retire. Qingshan had money and the army had people. Qingshan County could finally afford a sufficient number of auxiliary yamen runners, which could squeeze the clan family's right to speak. However, the officials of Daeong have too much power and have been letting the county government squeeze the power of the clans and villages. In the future, they may move towards more severe exploitation. Li Ju has not yet figured out how to deal with the future situation. This situation may not be resolved in another 1,000 years. County Magistrate Wu borrowed the military's rotation method and regularly changed the station of the auxiliary yamen runners. This is a way to prevent the yamen runners and some villagers from colluding to be overbearing. At least there is no better solution now. Li Ju also comforted him that the biggest problem with changing the station is that he does not understand the local situation, but Qingshan County is so big that the difference between villages is not too big, and it is far less troublesome than changing the guard. Instead of worrying that the yamen runners do not understand local affairs, it is better to worry that they will be connected in a roundabout way and even gather together to deceive the superiors and the subordinates, and harm the local area. Therefore, when expanding the recruitment of auxiliary yamen runners, County Magistrate Wu also introduced the Baojia system. If one person violates the law, all those who guarantee him will be guilty of the same crime. Of course, County Magistrate Wu has not yet figured out how to determine and punish this crime, but it does not prevent him from using it to hit people. In short, Qingshan County can afford more yamen runners. County Magistrate Wu feels very satisfied. When he was reporting on his work, he even heard that Sima County Magistrate often had a headache and refused to obey the management. He felt a strange sense of pride. Chen Guiyang's first feeling when he entered Qingshan City was trance. It was already past the middle of the night, and Qingshan City was still lit up. Many shops were still open, and there were pedestrians and carriages on the road. If it was the old Chen Guiyang, he would only think it was natural, but the current Chen Guiyang discovered a deeper truth. There are still so many people lighting lamps at this time. Not only the shops have to light lamps, but also the pedestrians and carriages have to light lanterns, which means that these people are willing to pay the cost of lamp oil and candles. There are still people doing business, which means that the order volume is so large that they have to spend more time than people in other places to meet the demand. There must be a strong production capacity and consumption capacity behind it. Then there are the yamen runners who are still patrolling late at night. They patrol back and forth in various areas in groups of 3. Chen Guiyang simply estimated the total number of yamen runners in the county based on the number of yamen runners encountered on this section of the road, which is obviously too much. At this time, Chen Guiyang didn't know that the yamen runners in Qingshan City worked in 3 shifts. If 3 shifts were counted, there would be at least twice as many people. More people means more expenses, and more expenses means more income. Combined with the conditions of developed commerce and a large population, it is self-evident how prosperous this place will be. San Jiu first sent Chen Guiyang to the post house in the city to stay, and then returned to Lee Garden by himself. Lee Garden had turned off the lights and rested. Because people often come in and out late at night, it is now customary to keep the side door on the east side open for 12 hours. Only Old Zhang and the Wei brothers and sisters who redeemed their sins that year guard the door, and the night watchman pass by every quarter of an hour. The carriage stopped outside the south gate, and everyone handed their identity documents to Old Zhang for inspection. Old Zhang inspected it skillfully. There was no need to check during the day. During the day, he only checked whether he was carrying a weapon, not his identity. There was not much difference between Lee Garden and the park. San Jiu greeted Old Zhang skillfully. It's been a while since we last met. You look more energetic. Old Zhang's face was flushed, and he laughed. Tofu, girl, you have worked hard to earn money to support the family. Come in and have a rest. San Jiu responded, and looked at Wei Qi and Wei Bei, the 2 siblings, but didn't say anything to them. He called everyone to go in with the horses and carriages. Old Zhang closed the outer fence, leaving only a lamp to illuminate the way in, and sighed contentedly. Thanks to Miss Zhao and the others, this year's New Year's goods are full of small carts. You two should have some this year, right? I said that the master is the most tolerant to you children. In the past 3 years, everyone has been watching whether you are doing well or not. Be good people in the future and live a good life. Wei Qi and Wei Bei didn't say a word, but just watched the group of people who came back from Jinling walk by with their heads held high proudly. San Jiu and Xiaolian washed up and went to bed hastily. The next day, they slept until the hour of C before getting up. They washed up and dressed again and prepared to report to Li Ju. Li Ju finally returned to Lee Garden from the Imperial Farm in just 3 or 5 days, just around the time San Jiu planned to get home. The most important work these days is the super inventory of various industries and the finishing work of the New Year's goods. Compared with previous years, there is an additional assessment of the interns. Those who can pass the assessment will really get the job. If they don't pass, then it's a pity. Come back next time. San Jiu heard Li Ju's laughter from a distance, and just when she was wondering why he was so happy, she arrived at the door of the small building and saw a few apprentices from the pottery sitting outside in groups of 3 or 2. There were 2 huge wooden boards against the wall next to them. San Jiu guessed that there was progress in the glass. She went up and asked, and it was true. This solved the most urgent problem that Li Ju wanted to solve in the past year and a half. Sanjiu couldn't help but smile. Although she didn't understand the reason, as long as Li Ju was happy, she was happy too. Chapter 295 Return. Li Ju is not the kind of person who gets angry or overjoyed, but today he really couldn't help but feel happy. First of all, the several managers who were on internship all passed the assessment, so they didn't have to go through it again. Secondly, the benefits of various industries this year were very good, and this benefit refers to output and efficiency rather than profit. In short, this year's production capacity table is very beautiful. Thirdly, Meng Shai and Wang came early in the morning with the potters in the kiln to announce the good news that they finally fired a 3-foot square light green flat glass. Li Ju was so happy that he almost jumped up and finally suppressed his mood. He told the kitchen to prepare wine and food for everyone to celebrate, and the bonus gifts were just in time to prepare them together before the new year. Meng Shai and Wang and the potters celebrated with Li Ju for a long time and were allowed to increase the quantity on a small scale after the new year. Meng Shai and Wang and the manager in charge of potters and kilns discussed with Li Ju that the glass plate workshop needed to add 10 small workers and 3 big workers. Li Ju agreed without hesitation and put up the exhibition board before the new year and opened the recruitment after the new year. Meng Shai and Wang and the other potters left the small building happily and went to the private room in the main hall to have a celebration banquet. Sanjiu went in with Xiaolian, Gizzy and others to report. Sanjiu first congratulated Yifeng and then handed the account books and books that recorded all the events in Jinling to Li Ju for review. He reported on all the events recorded above, including the account transactions, personnel arrangements, and industrial conditions involved, no matter how big or small, and explained everything in detail. If it were a careful and suspicious owner, it would be possible to take a day or two to process an industry, but Li Ju only spent half a day to listen to it. He didn't ask about many details, he only looked at the summary and results. Li Ju gave Sanjiu a high level of authority and dividends, and also gave her considerable freedom. It was enough for him to see Sanjiu and him walking side by side on the same road. Sanjiu is a smart person. As long as they are on the same path, other things are not very important. During the year Sanjiu spent in Jinling, he mainly laid the foundation, bought land, looked at shops, and made purchases. The industries he was in charge of had not yet been officially put into production, so there were mostly expenses. The only income was the reward from Chengyang and the rent from the shops and land he bought. Therefore, the account balance was very ugly, but the land deeds, house deeds and personal deeds were very pleasing. After looking at the total, Sanjiu said truthfully, if we really start weaving next year, it will cost about 1,000 taels to buy looms and weavers. The weaving in Jinling is really different from that in other places. Although it is just as slow, the brocade it weaves is really exquisite, which has attracted many weavers in Jinling, and the price is not low. Li Jiu said, it doesn't matter. Our weaving is still for the clothes of the common people, not for the rich and powerful or tribute. It's just that Jinling already has a professional division of labor that is one step faster than ours. Considering the cluster and market capacity, I sent you there. I never thought of competing with Jinling's weaving for the market, and I never thought of weaving such luxurious kisi and brocade. Sanjiu smiled and said, Master underestimated your family's inherited craftsmanship. Until now, we still don't know how to print such vivid and lively patterns, nor how to weave such thick, tight but light cloth. No matter what Master thinks, the families in Jinling were scared when they heard that Master was going to set up a factory in Jinling. I don't know how many obstacles they put in my way. If it weren't for the concern of my husband and the protection of Her Royal Highness the Princess, I would never have been able to display my skills. Li Ju said, thank you for your hard work. This year, I have to ask you to continue to be the vanguard in Jinling. I'm afraid of any accidents, so I'll bring more people to you. You are alone, and it is inevitable that others will treat you as a soft specimen. There's no rush. Her Royal Highness the Princess can still protect me for 2 years. Master's energy here can be used at the port of Yu County. Opening a seaport can also leave another way for Qingshan County, and we can move without worries. Li Ju looked up at her and said, things over there may be a little trouble. Do you want to keep a little distance? It's not anything else. I'm worried that you will be taken out on and become a target of others. Sanjiu said, "No, your highness is not the kind of person who will hide behind and let others make him a target. Moreover, although I'm not qualified to say this, I still want to say that sometimes I want to protect your highness." Why? Li Ju did not think that Sanjiu was of low status and poor background and was not worthy of protecting others, but was simply curious. Sanjiu's smile was a little more maternal. "Why did the master want to protect us in the first place?" "I want to protect your highness for the same reason now. It's probably because I have it myself, so I hope others have it too. The master gave me the greatest freedom and the most indulgent self, which is what the princess wanted but couldn't get. Seeing your highness suppressing herself to reach her goal, I couldn't help but want to help her. Isn't this what the master taught us? Once you have it yourself, you can go back and help others." Li Ju suddenly felt that his teaching them was not in vain. Li Ju did not arrange any more classes before the new year. After the inventory of the industry, he started to distribute New Year's goods. The New Year's goods that everyone has are the simplest, and they are uniformly configured according to the needs of various groups of people. Those who have just married or had children get more condolences, the elderly get more fruits, rice and noodles, and the children get more stationery. All of them are distributed according to the number of people. This year, because there are new managers and new workers who have passed the internship period and become formal workers, there will be more dividends. Li Ju reclassified the industries. All industries related to basic people's livelihood, such as cement, seeds, compost, and coarse cloth, must control prices, so the profits are extremely low. The dividends involved in these industries are paid by Li Ju himself. There are also some less civilian industries, such as ready-made clothes, glass, machinery, high-end fabrics, and bicycles, which will have certain profit requirements. The dividends involved in these industries are created by the industries themselves. In the past, there were only small-scale dividends, and the main participants were dyeing and weaving Chen, Lao Liu and others. This year, the scope of dividends has been expanded, and the time consumed has also increased a lot. It was not until the 26th that all the dividends were distributed. After sending gifts and dividends to Yu Yaoniang and his friends, Li Ju finally finished a year of hard work and could take a breath and think about next year's plan. Journey to the West is about to end, and he has copied a small part of Synopsis in 3 or 5 play scripts. What should he copy next year? How about copying the investiture of the gods? It seems unnecessary. King Shan already has a very mature literature of essays and novels. The creativity of the ancients was very strong. The short stories written by Yu Yaoniang himself in supplement to Synopsis are just as exquisite and very readable. Can he take the time to copy books next year and do something else? In terms of agricultural books, composting has been started this year. The 2 most important things to do next year are greenhouses and fertilizers. The greenhouses here need to use flat glass to build a few modern greenhouses, which is easy to say. Composting is a bit difficult to systematize. Li Ju plans to use the simplest observation method to match the relationship between crops and fertilizers, and strive to spend 3 to 5 years to publish a farming book specifically teaching fertilization. Li Ju's idea is to record the relationship between the lack of fertilizer varieties corresponding to different crops, different stages, and different growth trends, and compile them into a book. While recording the results of the observation, he can continue to promote general education and continue to build his agricultural technology station system. He has no say in the business. It depends on whether County Magistrate Lao Zhang can persuade Xia Taishao to open the port together. With the port opened, the entire Huajia and Asan will usher in a new stage of development. Lao Liu has collected some talents from foreign countries, and now they are all forced by Lao Liu to learn Chinese and rules. If the seaport can be opened, then these people will be useful. There are both agriculture and commerce, and the rest is industry. The technology he has brought to the textile industry has not been fully digested, and this little technology has led to the enclosure of land in some areas, so he is not in a hurry to continue to increase the stakes for the time being. Instead, it is necessary to take advantage of the greenhouse to build a flat glass production line. Greenhouses combined with composting technology, coupled with the breeding technology that has become stable, can really rest assured about the agricultural base. With a stable agricultural base and a technical system that can be self-optimized and upgraded, agriculture has a foundation. To break through the bottleneck, it is necessary to rely on more advanced chemical and biological technologies. After 3 years of popularization, science and technology is no longer a new word. Can it go one step further? Yu checked the curriculum design of several subjects for next year in the school, added the preparations for the establishment of several subjects, and finally wrote the word potential energy under the subject of physics. Last year, the subject of physics could not be pushed forward to the conservation of mass. This year, let's try again, hoping to go further. Chapter 296, Records of Chengayang 1. The closer it is to the end of the year, the more lively Qingshan City becomes. Many people who make a living as merchants have taken root in Qingshan City, and reunions are also held in Qingshan City. Because Liyuan distributes money and things around New Year's Eve every year, people in Liyuan have to buy things with money. In addition, Liyuan's industry will also throw out some special products in the last period of the year before the new year, so Qingshan people have developed the habit of being more active from New Year's Eve to the 15th day of the first lunar month. On New Year's Eve, they even live in the style of going to the big market. Chengayang stayed in Qingshan City for 2 days, and moved from the post house to live next to the county government office. County Magistrate Wu already knew Chengayang's identity, and was scared to death in the winter. He hurriedly transferred many reliable guards from Liyuan and the county government office, to secretly protect the princess. He also repeatedly told the street vendors not to cheat, deceive, or argue with others, for fear that Chengayang would be cheated, if he was not thoughtful. Qingshan City is extremely prosperous, and quarrels are common, but fighting is rare. After being reminded by County Magistrate Wu, everyone became more tolerant, and the atmosphere in the entire county and the villages and towns near the county was unprecedentedly good. Chengayang wandered around Qingshan City for more than 10 days, and she felt that she could not see enough everywhere. Because she was a stranger from another place, she could not see the confidential core of some industries controlled by the local joint venture, and could only see the performance on the periphery. What she could see already made Chengayang marvel, and what she could not see was even more itchy. Not to mention anything else, just the stage of day in society was enough to make Chengayang linger. Recently, it was lively, and day in society took the opportunity to arrange 5 full-day dramas, all of which started at 20 yuan, and the lyrics were gorgeous, or the figures were romantic, or the martial arts were wonderful, or the routines were skillful, or they were lively or humorous, and men, women, old and young could find their favorite one. It was just that the dandies who supported the leading roles quarreled with each other, and day in society could earn hundreds of taels of silver a day. Because the money earned by day in society was donated to the poor except for the wages, rewards, and money for props renewal, everyone felt at ease spending money. Chengayang also listened to operas in the capital. The operas he listened to included the Qingshan tune passed on by Qingshan and the Zijin tune after Yaonang's modification. The operas that could be passed on to the palace and the rich and powerful families could not be said to be bad, but they were not as vivid and interesting as Qingshan. Chengayang liked 2 of them. Whenever these 2 plays were performed, she would book the most expensive private room to watch the opera. This private room was usually used by County Magistrate Wu to entertain guests, but now it was given to her. Chengayang's favorite was Mugying Takes Command, followed by The Legend of the White Snake. The heroine of Mugying was played by Xinhang and Xiaola in turn, and the heroine of the White Snake was Qianhang. Chengayang liked the sentiment and melancholy between Qianhang's eyebrows, and always felt that she was different from other roles. However, Chengayang was new, and occupied a private room alone. She rarely watched the show with other people. Old fans could not see her, let alone tell her about the affair between Master Qian and Master Li. After listening to Legend of the White Snake 3 times, the owner of Dayan Club beat the gongs and drums to tell everyone that New Year's Eve was the annual New Year's Eve party of Liyuan, so Dayan Club would stop performing for 2 days. Everyone knew that Dayan Club had such a party every New Year's Eve. Besides, this party was free. Those who wanted to watch it drew lots. If they won the lottery, they would have a seat. If they didn't win the lottery, they could build a stage by themselves, or watch it on the rooftops of the surrounding houses. Chen Guiyang didn't know so much. When she saw that day and club no longer sold tickets, she thought that Li Yuan would not be open to the public, so she thought that she should find Sanjiu to take her to the base camp of Li Yuan. These days, Chen Guiyang wanted to experience Qingshan City through her own personal experience, and deliberately did not ask Sanjiu to be a guide. On this day, she couldn't help it. Qingshan City is better than the legend. She saw it with her own eyes, and now she wants to find Sanjiu to get the qualification to watch the evening party. Sanjiu, like Li Ju, has not been idle these days. Seriously speaking, Sanjiu, Wang Dejun and Li Ju are the highest decision-making center of Li Yuan's large group. Li Ju has the right to veto and approve with one vote, and has absolute control. In addition, he also serves as the technical center. Wang Dejun is the general manager of finance and human resources. Sanjiu is responsible for all other matters except technology, finance and human resources, and also serves as the general decision maker of Jinling's many affairs. Others can be idle, only the three of them cannot be idle. Sanjiu worked hard to open up wasteland in Jinling, and she still has to dispatch people and things in Qingshan when she comes back. Especially her first industry, Musi clothing store, in which Li Ju only holds 40% of the shares in his personal capacity, and Sanjiu and Yu Yaoniang hold 60%. This clothing store is completely different from other industries that are 100% controlled by Li Yuan. Even if the money earned in a year is very limited, Sanjiu still has to spend some effort to look at the account book. This year, Yu Yaoniang has completely established herself. Sanjiu only took a glance and compared the amount of goods, people, and money coming in and out. The three numbers were almost the same, so he put them aside and pulled Yu Yaoniang to praise her with a smile, saying, "You have made progress this year, you have done a good job, you are taller and prettier. Who would have thought that the first time we met would be like that?" Yu Yaoniang blushed and jumped twice on the spot, also praising Sanjiu for her ability. As she was talking, the aunt outside shouted in a hoarse voice, "Mrs. Zhao, there is a guest looking for you, from Jinling." Jinling is still full of temptation to local people. The aunt mentioned Jinling's name, which inevitably attracted many curious eyes. Sanjiu guessed that Princess Chen Guiyang must have come to discuss the new year with her, and she only said, "It should be a master in Jinling who wants to talk to our master about opening a factory. I will support him first. After the new year, when he is free, he will naturally take care of it himself." Others believed her. When she went out, she did meet a few young servants and maids, chatted with them for a few words, and then took 2 guards with them to get on the sedan Sharon horse and left. They were supposed to be people who came to discuss business. There are many such people nowadays. There are probably 3 or 5 groups of people who want to talk to Li Ju about opening a factory together every day. Everyone is not surprised. Sanjiu was taken by Chen Guiyang's people to where Chen Guiyang is living now. There, Chen Guiyang was watching the cook making milk tea bags bought from Liuji goods store for her. The clothes and utensils used by everyone were all made in Qingshan. Just look at the shallow-mouthed crab apple plate on the table for fruits and vegetables. The patterns on the edge are all panteohu, a standard Qingshan-style decoration. Sanjiu greeted Chen Guiyang and said with a smile, "Madam Yang, are you looking well? Have you had a lot of fun these days?" Chen Guiyang replied, "I'm very happy. I forgot about you. Now I just remembered and invited you to come." Chen Guiyang exchanged a few words of greeting with her, then led Sanjiu to the small study to sit down and talk. "I don't know the rules of your family. I'm embarrassed to come to your door directly. I can only invite you today, and I will go to your house tomorrow." Sanjiu said, "As long as your highness is happy, it is worthwhile to have you here. It is not in vain that we have spent so much effort to sneak to Qingshan City. By the way, why did my lady come to me? I don't look like you have something to do. You are not here to tell me about the benefits of this place, right?" Chapter 297, Chen Guiyang Records 2. Yang didn't bother to beat around the bush with Sanjiu, and directly asked for a spot to watch the party. Sanjiu smiled and said, "Oh, you're lucky you asked me. If you asked someone else, you might be cheated. Our New Year's Eve party is open to everyone. Your Highness can just find someone to go and reserve a seat. Or if your Highness agrees that I should inform the gentleman, and the gentleman will ask the Dayan Society to reserve a seat for you, that's also fine. Chen Guiyang raised his hand and said, that's not necessary. I'll ask someone to reserve a seat. By the way, I also want to visit your garden. Is there any way to sneak in quietly? Sanjiu smiled again. Our garden is open there. It's not closed. Just don't go into the house where everyone lives. You can wander around the fields and gardens at will. But if the person who goes in is tall and mighty, there will inevitably be a few patrolling guards to accompany him. Chen Guiyang was surprised and said, that's strange. Why do you let outsiders come in and out of your house at will? It is said that the garden is one's home, but in fact, only a few houses can be considered a home. Moreover, the doors of the houses are locked, so even if outsiders come, they can't easily enter the real house. Besides, whether the master teaches in the garden or farms, he hopes that more people can see it. Another thing is that, even if such a house is open to allow people to come and go, people who make trouble for no reason dare not come. There are 20 to 30 strong men and women taking care of the garden all year round. Lee Garden is very similar to a comprehensive community in the future world. The flow of people is relatively complex and frequent. However, the retired elderly people in the garden are not idle. They are comparable to the people in Yu Yaoniang district. In addition to the daily patrol guards and long-term workers in the garden, the security is not worse than the houses outside, but not as strict as the gates of the rich families. Usually, except for the lively children who like to play in Lee Garden, most of them are their parents who want to be safe here. Adults have their own things to do and don't come to see the novelty. Lee Garden has been there for 5 years, and the novelty has passed. There was no scenery or vendors in the garden. Others who came only saw 2 plots of land, a spring, and a grey house. There was nothing interesting. Gradually, no one came on weekdays. Only when the experimental field was harvested and the New Year's goods were distributed, people from all over the place would come to watch the fun. Chen Guiyang carefully asked about the access control of Lee Garden. He was very curious and simply kept Sanjiu for lunch. In the afternoon, he took the opportunity to send Sanjiu back and sent someone to Lee Garden to see if what Sanjiu said was true. Sanjiu was full of confidence, not to mention today, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, any day. If you go there, you will see what I said. So Chen Guiyang sent his trusted maid Ziking and wet nurse son to Lee Garden and told them to tell everything they saw clearly. Qingshan City is not big. It takes only 2/4 of an hour to walk from Chen Guiyang's place to Lee Garden. The city was bustling with many people and vehicles. They squeezed through the crowd and turned to Lee Garden. 3/4 of an hour had passed. The sun was setting and the sky was gloomy. Sanjiu expected that there should not be many people in the garden at this time. When he arrived at the door, he saw a large group of people gathered at the door. Sanjiu hurriedly got off the car and walked quickly to find the old man Zhang who was guarding the door. He saw that the old man Zhang was surrounded in the middle with an embarrassed look on his face. Fu Xiaoguya and Wei Qi and Wei Bei were helping the old man Zhang to reason. Many of the people who were arguing in front of the door were scholars. Fu Xiaoguya had just passed the examination for a scholar this year, so he was inevitably a head shorter than many seniors. Others were not even scholars, so they dared not speak loudly. Therefore, the strong men on the side of Lee Garden were frightened by the scholars on the opposite side. Sanjiu stood in the middle. The scholars who gathered around her said, "How can you be so rude?" and hurriedly used their sleeves to block and avoid her, but at the same time they could not help but steal a peek at the beautiful Sanjiu. Sanjiu had just patted his chest to show that anyone was allowed to come and go at will in Lee Garden, but he was slapped in the face. He was very unhappy for a moment and asked, "What's going on? Why are you making a fuss on such a big day?" Old Zhang found the main person and told him everything. Several scholars said that our master insulted the saints and wanted to argue with our master. I said that the master was at home writing articles and if they wanted to find him, they could just go in. They refused and insisted that our master tricked them into coming in with ill intentions. How could this be justified? So many people were watching in broad daylight. How could it be ill-intentioned? The leader of the scholars was not convinced and jumped out to refute loudly. Hey, don't talk nonsense. Li Qingshan knows magic. He used some kind of sleight of hand to move people. Who knows if we can get out after entering this door? The scholars echoed one after another, and the repeated magic and magic ways made Sanjiu confused. When did our master learn magic? Why don't I know? Old man Zhang had no idea. That Fu Gaya explained. They think that the biology, physics, geography and other subjects taught by the master are all nonsense, and they also say that the looms and grains were moved here by magic. I can't argue with them here, and I don't want to ask the master to come forward. They are arguing too much, so I brought people here. But they are all scholars. Even if the county magistrate comes, he will never dare to touch them. Sanjiu took another look at the group of scholars. They were all wearing the standard long gowns of Confucian scholars, brocade, and furs used by rich children, and the poor only had padded jackets to keep warm, but they were much better off than ordinary people. No matter how poor the scholars were, they were all richer than ordinary people. Judging from their accents, these were not locals, or most of them were not locals. Sanjiu had been in Jinling for a year, and knew the people in other places too well. In Qingshan County, Sanjiu didn't dare to say that his words were final, but at least his words were powerful and people listened to him. But away from the cultural environment of Qingshan County, Zhao Sanjiu was just a little girl in the eyes of others. She was only fit to embroider in the house, and was not allowed to speak when men talked. In front of outsiders, who didn't understand the situation, her appearance would have the opposite effect. So Sanjiu didn't directly suppress the scholars who came to the door, but said to old man Zhang, let someone go and invite the master. They are scholars, and we who are not scholars can't handle it. The master has always been simple, and will not be angry, because of such a small matter. Old Zhang said. Fu Dalong said the same thing, and he has been invited. Sanjiu snorted, looked at the group of people again, and called Fu Xiaogi over. I'll ask for embroidery samples. Draw them. You write down their names and hometowns, and bind them into a book with portraits, and send it to our property, so that everyone can memorize it. In the future, when these people come to our store, you are not allowed to receive them, and you are not allowed to sell them things. Fu Xiaogi looked at her in surprise. Sanjiu rarely showed her arrogant side, which was surprisingly imposing. Sanjiu added, they say bad things about the master. I don't want to serve them. If the master blames me, I will bear the responsibility. Fujiui hurriedly said, the master was attacked, and the disciple is to blame. The idea was mine, and my sister and I share the blame. Sanjiu didn't say it was bad, and snorted again, returning to the sedan chair, and bowing to Ziking and son. I'm really sorry, something happened at home, and I can't accompany you. Anyway, it won't affect your visit to the garden, so please do as you please. I won't follow, and the madam and the young lady can act on their own, which is more realistic. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298, Chengyang Records 3. Ziking and Son were both born into a family of officials in the capital. One entered the palace when he was young, and the other entered the palace after being widowed. Throughout their lives, they had never bowed their heads, except to the emperor, empress, princess and other masters, and their arrogant nature had never changed. Both of them had been the princess's close servants for many years, so how could they take a few scholars seriously? And because the princess herself was emotionally close to the Li family, they could not help but be close to the Li family. When they thought of scholars like Yu Yaoniang's husband, they even felt more disgusted. The two got off the sedan and just said it's no problem. Ziking, wearing a brocade-made men's robe and cloak, glanced at the scholars who were still arguing outside and said, Miss, your master has a rank. Although it is not a real job, an official of rank is an official of rank, and he also has official robes and official status. Some villains can just not bow to your master when they see him. Don't let them mess things up. After that, Ziking, Sun Mama and others walked straight to the corner gate. Old Zhang called out an aunt from inside and asked her what they were doing. They just said that they heard that Lee Garden was different from other places and wanted to see the world. The aunt took out a notebook to record the time and number of people and let them in to stroll around. After Ziking reminded her, Sanjiu remembered that her master was still an official. Once he put on the official robe, he would not be inferior to anyone in Jinling City. She hurriedly found Wei Bei again and asked her to take a message to ask Li Ju to change into a bullfighting robe before coming out. Can Li Ju's empty title suppress people? Sanjiu is 70% sure. Although scholars are the most powerful and unyielding, it depends on the occasion. It is just to refute their remarks, not to ask them to do anything that violates the 3 bonds and 5 constant virtues. It should not be to the point of a fight to the death. She was blocked at the door and scolded for a long time because Sanjiu was a woman. Those scholars kept the separation between men and women and dared not move forward at all, otherwise they might fight. Now they can only scold Li Ju as a coward hiding under a woman's skirt. Sanjiu refused to give in. You can scold her as you like. It's just some words. Hasn't she heard it before? If someone else is mentioned, Sanjiu would dare to fight back. Scholars, hens crow at dawn. Hens crow at dawn. Sanjiu, whether the rooster crows or not, the sky will get bright. How can the rooster crow, but the hen can't? Hens lay eggs to support the family, but your rooster is only 1 or 2 years old and is eaten by others. Scholars, King Shenli shrank the turtle's neck, but let a woman take the blame. How shameless. Sanjiu, you don't need a butcher knife to kill a chicken, and there is no need for my master to come in person to send you. Scholars, King Shenli's evil words confuse the people and shake the foundation of the country. How can we tolerate him? Sanjiu, sir, you have never misled people. You have devoted yourself to farming and saved countless lives. The only ones who are not happy to see you are you. You are full of the words of sages, but you have an empty head that doesn't think. How can you call yourselves the people? And what achievements do you have to call yourself the foundation of the country? Scholars, it's an insult to civilization. It's an insult to civilization. Sanjiu, I called you a stupid sour chicken. Who knows who you are? If you are not a sour chicken, how can I insult you? After a lot of back and forth, Li Ju inside finally got the news and hurried out. He didn't wear a bullfighting suit, but just in case, he did bring the imperial seal with him and asked someone to report to the county government and the school. Li Ju felt that this matter had nothing to do with the county school. If it was instigated by the old Confucian scholars in the county school, Lao Huan would not have been unaware of it. Moreover, the county school still expected him to issue a few more pigs and sheep a year, and no matter how much they hated him, they would not make a fuss in front of others. So Li Ju also wondered who was so annoying that he came all the way to cause trouble. Sanjiu, old Zhang saw him coming out and hurried to make room for him. Sanjiu deliberately raised his voice and said, "Why are you here, sir? Why don't you send such an ignorant person here in person?" Li Ju said, "I usually correspond with Zheng Shanchang, Zheng Shidao, Yang Zushi, Yang Mengson, and Wu Jialao, Wu Yu. We often have dozens of letters back and forth because of some principles of heaven and earth, but we still cannot agree. I'm worried that our family's words are not spread deeply outside and others may not understand them. I don't know that they don't understand, so I won't explain or resolve their doubts and can only let this confusion deepen. It happens that someone came to challenge us and attracted everyone's attention. Isn't this a great opportunity to clarify doubts for the world? I always say, the truth becomes clearer the more it is debated, and I'm here today for this reason. You should go home and have a rest first. You are busy all year round, and you should have some free time." Sanjiu responded softly, "Well, I'll go then. Master, don't be too kind. Some people don't deserve it." Li Ju looked at the scholars outside and said loudly, "Whether it is a magic or not, you know it in your heart. Let's just talk about this magic words to confuse the masses." "What magic words? What masses are being confused?" Li Ju's attitude was gentle and serious, and he was upright. With his heightened physique, the scholars who were just indignant stepped back at the same time. They were students studying in Suzhou, Qiantang, Songjiang and other places. Recently, many miscellaneous studies of Li Yuan have been circulated in various places, pointing directly to the root of the resonance between heaven and man, and delving into some of the contents about human independence, even shaking the theoretical foundation of 3 bonds and 5 constant virtues, and also posing a challenge to the hierarchy. Someone else deliberately instigated and pinned some recent unrest in Jiangnan on Li Ju. Of course, the few things about Yu County were not wronged. In short, under a series of combined punches of some people conniving, some people instigating, and some people framing, this group of scholars, representing the most stubborn group of people in Neo-Confucianism, were the first to stand up and formally confront Li Ju. Li Ju could not discuss Confucianism, legalism, Buddhism, and Taoism with them, but he was not tired of discussing science. He just took this opportunity to respond to all the doubts accumulated in the past few years and solve all the problems at once. Li Ju asked people to bring chairs and tables, and generously invited all the scholars to sit down. Everyone started the debate from the place where we live is a bowl in a friendly manner. In fact, the ancient speculation that the ground is a sphere has existed for a long time, but it has never been popular and accepted. Li Ju was the first person to say with confidence that the earth is round. It is a huge sphere. Combined with the actual experience of the 4 seasons, day and night, rainy season, dry season, and monsoon changes, it is easier for people who have not read books to accept it, but it is difficult for people who have read books to accept it with their preconceived cognition that the sky is round and the earth is square. Li Ju's miscellaneous studies, especially agronomy, geography, and biology, are very dependent on the theory of the round earth, so the scholars use the theory of the round earth as a starting point to challenge Li Ju's miscellaneous studies from the foundation. Li Ju was calm and unhurried. Many of these scholars came from Songjiang and helped him a lot. As long as these scholars go to the sea and take a look, they will naturally see that the master appears first. This is their life experience. As for the horizon, solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, they are all good evidence. But the better evidence is indeed traveling around the world. As for the scholars' insistence on the round earth and square earth, Li Ju did not refute the philosophical and cultural connotations in it. Too many speculative things have been derived from these 4 words. If Li Ju put these purely cultural images into the battlefield, it would really be to use his own lower 4 horses to fight against his upper 4 horses. Li Ju respected their literary processing, but did not give in to the objective truth. Anyway, neither side could produce their own evidence, but Li Ju had too much evidence. In addition to the scholars from Songjiang, there were also fishermen who went out to sea to fish, or even trade overseas. Li Ju talked about masts, sea levels, and skylines, and they all had personal experience. On the contrary, there was no actual evidence for the round earth and square earth that the scholars insisted on. They could not answer what the end of the ocean was, but Li Ju got food from the other side of the sea. Chapter 299, Chengyang Records 4. Li Ju and the scholars debated for 3 days at the gate, attracting thousands of people. All the local people who had free time came to listen for 3 days. On the last day, the scholars were unwilling to come, so they had to pretend to go home on New Year's Eve, before they were forced to stop. If it was Li Ju in the first half of the year, he might not be able to fight people to that extent. During the trip to Jinling, Li Ju and Yunnan had no idea how many private debates they had, but he had no pressure to deal with this group of scholars. There was nothing that Li Ju could not explain, including thunder, rain, dew, wind, snow, frost, and rainbow. Even solar and lunar eclipses, Mars guarding the heart, and the Earth dragon turning over can be perfectly explained in the entire geographical theory system extended from the Earth's spherical theory, which stripped away the relationship between the time and the emperor's behavior. The scholars were almost furious, but Li Ju held his experimental equipment and interacted with the onlookers. The local teachers wanted to help, but due to the relationship between the county magistrate, the county governor and the Li Yuan priest, they could only not help either side. As for Huangjian and Yufu, if they did not say that Li Ju was confusing the public with his lies and simply debated with him, Huangjian and Yufu might have rolled up their sleeves and joined them, but their statement counted them as the public who were confused, so forget it. They joined Li Ju and argued with the other party. Chen Guiyang was late on the last day, and she booked a 2-story building in the neighboring house to listen to the debate. What aroused her interest was the report from Ziking and Son, and their debate involved some remarks that the emperor was appointed by heaven. Ziking and Son really strolled in Lee Garden for half a day before returning that day. As Sanjiu said, all places were open to the outside, and nearby people could even go to the canal of Lee Garden to fetch water. Only the residence, the main hall, the kitchen, the warehouse, the experimental field, and the breeding farm were not allowed to enter, and other places could be visited slowly. However, if you want to fish, pick flowers, or damage plants and trees, you will be stopped. It can be seen that the owner attaches great importance to the few embellishments. However, the gardener of the Lee Garden would cut and tie the flowers and place them at the door for people to take for free during the flowering season. The fruits of the Lee Garden were not only kept for planting, eaten by themselves, or given to others, but any extra fruits were also given away. This contradicted the owner's emphasis on flowers and trees. When Ziking returned that day, she got the consent of the gardeners and took 2 winter sweets back, which are now placed on the desk in the study. What made Chen Guiyang curious was Ziking's description of Li Ju. Ziking compared his height, which was more than a head taller than her own, and his thickness, which could be hugged by 2 people. As for his clothes, it is just like what Lady Zhao said, all ordinary old things, no silk or embroidery. As for his appearance, it is extraordinary. He looks like a big black bear, with arms as thick as bowls and palms as big as cattail leaves. I see that the voices of those scholars have become smaller, half because they really can't argue with him, and half because they are afraid that he will slap them and beat them up. Chen Guiyang laughed when he heard it. You are kidding me. Even General Luo is not like this. The General Luo that Chen Guiyang mentioned was a military general who had followed Tai Fang Zhu to fight for many years. He had half Western barbarian blood and was awarded the title of Duke of Qi for his merits. In terms of body shape, this Duke of Qi is definitely the biggest in the capital. When fully armed, he looks like an iron tower. Ziking said, Master, don't believe it. General Luo is not even as tall as Master Li. How can he be a scholar? Just look at him walking with his head held high and looking so vigorous. I'm afraid General Luo can't beat him. Chen Guiyang was half believing and half doubting what she said, so he went to ask Sun. Sun smiled and said, although Xia's words are exaggerated, they are not completely false. When you think about it, he is indeed a tall man dressed as a warrior. But he is very good, with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, and a handsome appearance. He is indeed taller than the Duke of Qi, but not so fat. He is also fair and clean. I looked at him, and he has a very good figure. He is a well-behaved and good-looking child. I heard that his family is very wealthy, but he is not extravagant. He has an official rank and is on good terms with Prime Minister Yu, but he has never been bossy. It is also said that he is kind, but he is not just pretending to be a good person. He only thinks about the good of everyone, but he is very cruel to the evil. He can save the poor people and kill thieves and bandits with his own hands. Ziking added, this is true. I asked the bailiff on the way back, and he had beaten 30 people alone. He had even saved the 4th lady of Mr. Yu's family in Jinling before. It turns out that the savior that Yu Yaoniang was talking about was him. No wonder Yu Yaoniang married Mr. Li's apprentice. I was wondering that day why Yu Yaoniang married a poor scholar. Sun said, no matter how poor a scholar is, he will not be poor anymore after becoming Mr. Li's apprentice. However, although the son-in-law of the Yu family has become rich overnight, he has not forgotten his roots and does his job well. The master said that the kingly post, which is a good postman, is his apprentice's job. I heard that he now also handles the 4 things of grain, oil, cotton, and sugar. This is a practical job. It shows that Mr. Li is not shy about his apprentice and is indeed a good master. Although Chen Guiyang had never been an official, he knew that the most important things for an official to feed and clothe the people are food and cloth. Grain and oil accounted for most of the food, and cotton accounted for half of the clothing. Li Ju handed over the 2 most basic things to his apprentice. Chen Guiyang couldn't help wondering, he gave all these things to his apprentice? What will he do when he has his own children in the future? Sun said, that is a shadowy thing. Who knows in the future? However, when I watched a play a few days ago, I heard Madam Yu and Madam Huang say a few words, saying that Mr. Lee has no prejudice against family background. No matter who it is, as long as he is of the same mind and has the ability to manage the family business, he is willing to hand over this huge family property to that person. As for his future, he must find a confidant before he can get married. Since he is married, he will never have two mistresses. I asked Madam Huang, what if his wife has no children? Will he also have no two mistresses? Madam Huang said that Mr. Lee had already said that there is a fixed number of offspring. If his wife really has no children, then there is no children. He has thousands and thousands of people to come after him, so why should he force his descendants to be his own children? Zeking said, if that's true, he, a man from the mountains, is much more insightful than some university scholar or imperial edict holder. But I wonder who will benefit in the end. Zeking secretly stepped on both Prince Consort Yang and his mother. After making such a comparison, Chen Guiyang felt bored. Who's asking these questions? Just know that he doesn't care about family background and doesn't guard against his disciples. He is indeed a gentleman. That's enough. I'm just afraid that Madame Zhao has trusted the wrong person. He was also afraid that he had trusted the wrong person. After all, they had been exchanging letters for so long, and if they were not sincere, there was at least trust. Zeking and her friends went to Lee Garden twice, and Chen Guiyang was not idle either. She walked around the city for 2 days. It was not until the afternoon of the second day that Li Ju proved that solar and lunar eclipses were regular astronomical phenomena. Earthquakes had traces and geographical causes, and the sun, moon, and stars all had their own trajectories. As for the white rainbow piercing the sun and 3 suns in the same sky, they were just optical phenomena. Chen Guiyang could not sit still when the spearhead was pointed directly at the astronomical phenomena that had been used as an excuse for political struggles, so she came to the scene. When Chen Guiyang was a child, Dayang was far from being as peaceful as it is now. The border was unstable, there were sporadic rebellions among the people, and the weather was not very good. There was no opportunity for 2 consecutive years of good weather. Her father had accumulated considerable prestige in his conquest of the world. The crown prince ascended the throne smoothly, but there were still a few disgusting uncles and brothers who were eyeing him covetously. That year was really in dire straits, with drought in spring and flood in autumn, locust invasion, and earthquakes and solar eclipses. His Majesty the Emperor was forced to issue a self-criticism edict and use thundering means to suppress the chaos in the court. Chen Guiyang was young at the time and didn't remember many details, but she still remembered her father's temper, anger, and oppression. Now the emperor has cultivated his character and cherished his blessings and health early, perhaps because he felt that the heavy sins of killing in his early years might have shortened his life. Chen Guiyang came in person. She wanted to hear how Li Ju defended the helpless emperor of the past. Chapter 300, Chen Guiyang Records 5. Chen Guiyang and Li Ju had a lot of correspondence. From the miscellaneous knowledge she collected, she vaguely knew about climate issues such as the altitude of the sun and the relationship between water vapor and rainy seasons, and the causes of solar and lunar eclipses, but she didn't know anything else. Her way of obtaining information was too single, either from 100 schools of miscellaneous knowledge or she asked Li Ju for answers in a reply letter. If it wasn't written in the journal, or Chen Guiyang didn't ask, then naturally Chen Guiyang wouldn't get an answer. It just so happened that 100 schools of miscellaneous knowledge was positioned as basic science popularization, and it focused on biogeography and medicine related to farming, and rarely talked about deeper content and other disciplines. Therefore, what Chen Guiyang knew was far from enough for her to systematically refute those who forced her father back then. But today when she heard Li Ju talk about locust plagues and astronomical phenomena, her eyes lit up. This was the first time Chen Guiyang saw Li Ju's true appearance, and it was a little different from what she thought. Zeking didn't describe his appearance, only his body shape. Sun said he was fair and clean, with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. The filter of Li Ju in Yu Yaoniang's words was too deep. Chen Guiyang didn't believe it at all. In Chen Guiyang's mind, Li Ju looked like General Luo's son, with thick eyebrows, big eyes, a big beard, a hanging nose, a broad face, and a square chin. Today, when he saw it, he realized that his imagination was wrong. The clean that Sun said really meant clean, a white and clean face, without a beard or dirt. The sharp eyebrows and bright eyes really mean sharp eyebrows and bright eyes in the literal sense, which means that the eyes are bright, but much softer than the tiger eyes inherited from General Luo's ancestors. Those that she didn't mention, Li Ju really didn't have, she only saw this handsome talent. People may like fair-faced scholars like Fuji Yui, or admire the strong and muscular generals like Arda. Li Ju didn't take advantage of the scholar's air, but instead had the straightforward masculinity of a soldier. Ziking thought he looked like a bear, while Sun thought his face was too delicate, but Chen Guiyang thought it was just right. Sun glanced at Chen Guiyang and whispered, in fact, Madame Huang also said that among all the ladies she knew, Your Highness was the only one with whom he could exchange letters and share the same aspirations. Most people cannot understand his teachings, and even if they do, they may not take them seriously. His wish is the same as Your Highness's, which is a poem that Your Highness used to say. Really? That's very rare. Chen Guiyang didn't respond to Sun's comments. Sun looked around and said, there is no one else here. I have called them all out. The guards are outside the door and downstairs, far away. Chen Guiyang said, I know what you mean, but let's not talk about whether flowing water has feelings or not. Even if it has feelings, there are more than mountains and deep blue waters between us. It is rare to have a confidant in life, and it is even rarer to have a good teacher and helpful friend. I'm already very satisfied to learn knowledge from him, and get his help, to break free from the cage. Mother son, a woman does not have to be married to be happy. Prince Consort Yang is not a bad person, but every day I'm with him is painful. The days of getting rid of him are really the happiest time, since I got married. And since I went out incognito, I'm happier than before in Beijing. Because I'm free, I'm not restrained, no one points at me and tells me what to say and do, and someone asks me to learn things I'm not interested in. After being in a cage for a long time, I can return to nature. I'm so happy, mother. Sun was speechless for a moment. She was just an ordinary woman. Her husband died at the beginning of that year, and her posthumous son was murdered in the middle of the year. Fortunately, Chen Guiyang drank a few mouthfuls of her milk. Seeing her duty, the queen kept her by the princess's side as a wet nurse. The other wet nurses were gradually taken back by their own children and grandchildren, to be taken care of. Only she didn't want to go back to the family that almost killed her, so she stayed. Life in the palace was complicated, but human relationships were simple. The princess was taken care of very well by the queen. Sun's days were repeated in monotony day after day and year after year. So her knowledge stayed in the year of widowhood. She didn't know what a confidant was, nor what knowledge was. She had never been to school, but she knew a few words, and recited the female training and female precepts. She had no self and no pursuit. She only hoped that the little girl she watched grow up could be happy, and other things were not within her consideration. Her world was only a palm-sized area, and little Lekan occupied it all. As long as Lekan could smile and live comfortably every day in the future, she could do everything. In the crowd outside the window, Li Ju was debating with scholars about the plate's tectonics. He could easily draw the mountains and rivers of the entire continent, mark the places where earthquakes frequently occur, and he could also roughly draw vegetation, temperature, precipitation and other information on the map. The scholars looked at the map and their faces turned green. How could they know so much? At most, they only knew the boundaries of 100 miles. The local customs and habits outside were written in books. Li Ju not only knew that it snows in August in Hutian, but also knew why it snowed in August in the northwest, and it was still hot in August in the south of the Yangtze River. Li Ju also knew why the difference between day and night in Chang'an and Haping was so large. The scholars were no match for him. Everything the scholars knew could be answered. Li Ju's plate movement had solid evidence, but they had no evidence to question it. Just like other theories in the past 2 days, the scholars were defeated by Li Ju's casual remarks, and finally they could only run away on the pretext of a truce on New Year's Eve. It took them a long time to remember that, even if the earthquake was caused by plate movement, couldn't the plate movement be God's will? Now that they thought of this, it was too late to go to Li Ju to defend himself. What a mistake. But it was too late at that time. Li Ju had successfully gotten rid of the hat of misleading the public with evil words. Although his theory was still difficult to be accepted by the public, it had entered the field of learning. In the past, only the people of Kingshan called Li science learning. In addition to the medical department, only the people of Liuan called it school, and others called it factory class, which means that it was a place to train workers for several Liuan industries. This name even prevented many people from entering here to study. After all, except for those who were too poor to make ends meet, those who had a little extra money would rather take the serious path of studying and become craftsmen after graduation. After a debate among the scholars, Li's miscellaneous learning was removed. People today have not thought about the distant future, because New Year's Eve is here, and it is a grand 15-day celebration of Kingshan City. The New Year's festival in Kingshan City starts on the 8th day of the first lunar month and reaches its peak on New Year's Eve. There are many kinds of festivals until the 15th day of the first lunar month. It is not until the end of the first lunar month that it is considered to be truly over. The entire county will be immersed in a joyful and peaceful atmosphere, and even outsiders who have just arrived here are no exception. In particular, the Spring Festival Gala in Liuan has become a grand event that locals, except for those who stick to their posts with triple wages, must go to see on New Year's Eve. The people of Liuan naturally enjoy the treatment of watching the show from the audience, while others can only squeeze in everywhere, even climbing trees and roofs, and setting up outer stands to get a view. Liuan only took the open space under the stage, and the private rooms upstairs were empty. They were all occupied by local nobles with their servants. As long as they did not drive away the people, Li Ju generally would not care. There were also some scalpers who occupied the place early, and their accomplices sold seats outside. A seat close to them could be called 1 or 2 taels of silver. As for those who squeezed in to buy seats, but found that they could only stand to watch, and even 4 or 5 people bought the same seat, there were many cases of various pitfalls. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.